Rightio. Hello to those who are going to join. Thank you for someone being on already. That's great. We can get going. I'll just wait for a few more people just to start checking in, and we can get going properly. So, for the first time since mid-November, Celtic didn't actually have a midweek game this week. We've come through a very, very busy 4 games in 10 days, culminating in the quarter-final Scottish Cup win at Ibrox on Sunday. For the first time, as I say, since mid-November, Celtic had no midweek game. Great to have you on, Charles Gary, 23. Not doing too bad at all. Been trying to have a wee bit of a quiet week today. Through this week, as I say, been quite a intensive spells for the last 4 months, from mid-November through to mid-March. Celtic have 2 more games before the international break. So we've got the game on Saturday against Motherwell. Then we'll have a game the following Sunday against Dundee United, and then half the players will be away on international duty. Some unfortunately flying far away, which isn't awfully good for coming back, and then playing another game the following Sunday. We're against Dundee again, so they'll be playing Dundee United live on TV before the international break, and then coming back after the international break for another live game against Dundee, the other Dundee, so just across the road from Tannadice to Dens Park, or whatever they're calling it these days. Good evening to you as well, Pat McLaughlin. Good evening to yourself, Lauren. Yep. It has been a wee bit unusual, as you say, Lauren, for there not to be a midweek game to look forward to, a midweek game to react to. Celtic, as I say, 4 games in 10 days. Hail to you as well, Smell the Glove. Nice to have you on. Totally agree. 4 games in 10 days, 4 away games in 10 days. So Stuttgart, Rangers, Aberdeen, back to the Cup quarter-final on the last Sunday against Rangers. So 4 away games in 10 days. A lot of travelling. Listen to the wee interview with Viljami Sinisalo, talking about the fact that it's been, for him, a lot of travelling. He obviously, with Kasper Schmeichel's illness and injury, he's been starting all those games. He had a super game in Stuttgart, had a fine game against Rangers at Ibrox in the league, fine game against Aberdeen, made a brilliant save to keep us in the game against Aberdeen, and then didn't actually have to save many saves. He had apparently two saves in the Cup game against Rangers. Neither was a particularly really major save. And he was saying it's been quite difficult with all the yep. So Lauren, you're quite right. So he was saying basically a lot of traveling, a lot of staying away in hotels. So he was saying it was nice to be at home. So they would have had Monday and Tuesday off completely from training, from any playing, etc., and then back into training on Wednesday and Thursday. Did look at the training footage from this morning, earlier this afternoon. I couldn't see Kieran Tierney training. Certainly Cal McGregor wasn't in training. They are hopeful that Kieran Tierney will be back for Sunday, although I'm a wee bit, back for Saturday, but I'm a wee bit sceptical. Sorry, Lauren. Yes, sorry, getting back to Lauren's question, Lauren's point. Yes, I think certainly this is a A big game for Celtic. Obviously, Motherwell, we beat them 3-2 back in October. Late goal by Dyson Maida, who were 1-0 up early from Kelechi Iheanacho, then back to 2-1 down. Then Benjamin Negrin capitalised on a mistake by their goalkeeper to make it 2-2, and then Dyson Maida in added time converted a cross from Mikel Onge-Barlaquisha to give Celtic a well-earned win that time. Then we lost 2-0 in the Wilfred Nancy era between Christmas and New Year. Rather awful midweek evening performance. Motherwell played us pretty much off the pitch, and unfortunately we lost that game. So I think Motherwell do have a style of football that can trouble us. Motherwell, just pop this up on the screen. So basically, this is how the league stands at the moment. Hearts obviously 5 points ahead of us. Us 1 point ahead of Rangers, us 5 points ahead of Motherwell, and then underneath that you've got Hibs and Falkirk. I think it's pretty certain that those will be the final 6 for the 6-6 split. So teams like Falkirk, Hibernian, Motherwell can always take off points off the top few in the table. So I think Motherwell could well be kingmakers, could well help decide who gets the title. So I do think Celtic getting a confidence-building win against Motherwell at the weekend. They're on slightly more patchy form just recently. Couple of wins, couple of draws, and a defeat in recent games. They've lost to Hibs and to Dundee in their last games. So they've got... in their last 6, they've had 3 wins, 1 draw, which was against Rangers, and 2 defeats, games against Hibs, and they lost their last game against Dundee. So maybe they're just slightly struggling for their form. So totally agree. It is a big game. Good point made by Dexter about the fact that we've got a whole heap of players going away for international duties. Around about half the players who are going away for international duty, it will be for friendlies. Citing a very good example of Viljami Sinisalo, who is off to New Zealand for a couple of friendlies, playing for Finland. Long way. Obviously, it's the best part of a 24-hour flight from Scotland to New Zealand. The indications from the Finland manager was he wasn't going to give Sinisalo any starting time in that game. He's keen to give his captain and main goalkeeper, I think his name's Hardecki, the starting spot for both those friendlies. It does seem a bit pointless to drag Viljami Sinisalo off to the other side of the world just to sit on the bench and back up their goalkeeper. However, rules is rules, and under the FIFA rules, obviously the war in the Gulf shouldn't really infringe, as far as I'm aware, on flights to New Zealand or the Far East. I think you can fly other ways and avoiding the Gulf countries, but you do make a good point about whether we should be having friendlies, and I dare say there's not going to be any friendlies, obviously, in the Middle East area where it could be troubled by. So, fair enough. The rules is rules. For FIFA says you have to go off and play if you're fit. So I think, yeah, sorry. Yes, Motherwell's next on Saturday, then Dundee United, then international break, back for a game against Dundee on a Sunday, then St Mirren in the league, and then St Mirren in the cup semi-final, and then we're into the final 5 fixtures. So you're entirely right. I think certainly Celtic would be looking to win all those 5 games. The 4 league games, the Dundee United match, the Dundee match, the Motherwell match, the St Mirren match, win the cup semi-final into the cup final. I think that certainly does put Celtic on in a good setup for going into the final 5 games of the season. My understanding is that Celtic would be guaranteed home games against Rangers and against Hearts in those final 5. That obviously gives Celtic a big advantage. We have an away game against Motherwell. We guess an away game against Falkirk, and I can't really remember exactly whether we've been to Easter Road twice or not been to Easter Road twice, but all that does get balanced out. But I'm pretty sure we've got a home game against. Good evening to you as well, Chipper67. Good evening to you as well, Sligo Boy. A few of your comments have slipped past, unfortunately. I've not been ignoring anybody, just there's lots and lots of comments, lots of good points being put forward. Yes, Dexter, I do think we maybe are getting Motherwell at a good time, as I say, in their last 6 games, 3 wins, 2 defeats, and 1 draw, which was against Rangers. It was a bit of a surprise that they lost to Dundee in the last game. Yes, the quite a lot of the supposed football experts have kind of been saying that Hearts lead into the final 5 games is much easier than Celtic's. What I would say is teams like Kilmarnock, Dundee, Livingston, etc., who are fighting for points, they're going to be going all out to try and avoid being in the bottom 12th position. They're going to be trying to avoid being in the 11th position. So for all the teams who are down the bottom of the league, their points are just as important as the teams who are chasing the title or the teams that are chasing European qualifications, etc. So I don't think at this time of the season, where there's relegation battles and promotion battles and European battles, that anybody is an easy game. Dundee do seem to have come into a good run of form. Kilmarnock, under their new manager, the ex-Rangers player McCann, a lot more attacking, looking a lot better. So I think all these teams can certainly give us a bit of a surprise and maybe help Celtic get on top. My own personal feeling, I'm not sure what other people feel, but my own personal feeling is if Celtic could be within 3 points or fewer when we go into the final 5, I think Celtic would go into those final 5 games favourites. So we're certainly looking for one of Hearts' next 3 or 4 opponents to do us a wee bit of a favour. They have got a game against Motherwell before the split. And as I say, I think Motherwell are a team who could certainly take points off anybody, including us. And they obviously have got a shout for getting themselves into Europe next season. So I think they've got plenty to play for. Chipper67, I think at the moment, Celtic are doing a great job of not playing at their best, but finding ways to win, finding ways to, in the Rangers League match, finding a way to get back into that game and end up drawing it. I think on another day, with the chances Celtic got in the second half of the league match, Celtic could easily have won that game. And as someone was also saying there, could well be that goal difference could could have a deciding factor as well. Our goal difference at the moment is 6 worse than Hearts. Not quite worth an extra point, but it's bordering on that. And certainly recently Celtic haven't been winning any games by big margins. We've been winning by 1 goal generally for most games. So very good point from Wyoming CSC. The Celtic have struggled to play 45 minutes, to put 2 lots of 45 minutes together. In many ways, Celtic played a very, very good 120 minutes against Rangers on the defence. As I was saying a wee bit earlier on, don't think Sinisalo had any real proper saves to make. There was 1 clearance off the line by Sebastian Chinecki. There was obviously the Rangers goal that was punched into the net by their centre-back. But otherwise, Celtic's defenders, Trusty, Arthur, Scales, Arojo, Murray, all did a brilliant job of defending. At the other end, Celtic were a wee bit disappointing. We had that 1 headed goal by Dijsselmeyer that was just marginally offside. We didn't actually really have terribly many other proper chances to score at the other end. And the official figures were that Jack Butland, their goalkeeper, didn't actually have a single save to make. We didn't actually get a single shot on goal apart from the Dijsselmeyer disallowed header. Yep, good point. This would be my starting 11 for Saturday's game against Motherwell. Obviously, at this point, we don't know for certain that whether Tierney is fit to play or not fit to play. As I said, from watching the training video this morning, I couldn't see Tierney training, but they don't always show every player who's training. Certainly McGregor wasn't there, and my guess is McGregor's going to be out for the Motherwell match and the Dundee United match, and hopefully back for the Dundee match after the international break. That's also hoped to be when Arnie Engels is going to be back. And from having watched Alistair Johnston doing proper running on the grass in training by himself, it could well be that Alistair Johnston's back for around about after the international break or around about the cup semi-final time against St Mirren, etc. So having him back in the squad, I think, would also give Celtic a big boost. So this is my starting 11 for Saturday against Motherwell. So I've gone for Sinisalo in goals, Arojo, Arthur, Scales, and Sirachi. My feeling is if Tierney wasn't training today, it probably means he's still struggling with whatever he's struggling with. And so maybe that Sirachi starts and Tierney's on the bench. Midfield 2, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Hatate, with Hatate being more of the slightly deeper Callum McGregor role. Nygren in front of him. Yang on one side, Maeda on the left, and Chavancharo through the middle. It certainly does appear from recent games that Sebastian Chinecki isn't at his best starting games, but is at his best coming off the bench. Obviously, with a starting Maeda on the left, Chavancharo through the middle, it does give us the option to swap Maeda to the central role to put on Chinecki wide on the left. So don't know what other people feel, but my assumption is that Tierney is not going to be back fit to play a full 90 minutes against Motherwell. So I think at best he'll be on the bench. Trusty is suspended Trusty suspended because he had the red card for denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. So he was on one red card already this season. He then received another red card, obviously, for hitting the Hibs player on the arm. And because he'd already had a red card this season, prior to that, that turns it into an extra game. So he got 2 games for it being a violent conduct red card and an extra game for it being his second sending off of the season. So he got a 3-match ban, and the Motherwell game will be the third of those 3 games. So Jota's definitely out for the rest of the season. Carter Vickers is definitely out for the rest of the season. Sligo Boy, my understanding with Callum Osmond is he might be back for May. So the hope is that Alistair Johnston's back for April, and which obviously would be just after the international break, around about the St Mirren League match or the St Mirren Cup semi-final, with possibly Osmond back for the 6-6 split, going through late April into May, and hopefully the cup final. So, although I haven't seen Osmond running about, Alistair Johnston has been seen running about in training, running it would appear full speed, which is very encouraging, given the fact he had a hamstring problem, and he also seemed to be able to celebrate with his teammates and the fans on Sunday as well. It certainly was harsh for the level of violence that Trusty hitting the Hibs defender on the arm to be given as a red card, and then not just a red card, but a double red card, in essence, a 2-game suspension red card for violent conduct, and then that adding up to a previous red card to make him a 3-match suspension, rather than a 1 or 2-match suspension. So happily he was back for the cup quarter final. That allows him to play the cup quarter final, although he misses the next match. So my guess is that Benjamin and Arthur will go straight back in again, although Dane Murray couldn't fault him for. So Benjamin Arthur, I thought, had a good 60 minutes against Rangers on Sunday, and Dane Murray came on and was just as good as Benjamin Arthur had been. Just like Benjamin Arthur's extra bit of height in the box. Defensively, we do seem that bit stronger at corners and free kicks into the box, which is one thing that both Hearts use a lot, Rangers use quite a bit, Motherwell use a bit as well. So Wyoming CSC, I didn't read it in full, but Brian Wilson, the acting chairman, did make a statement this evening. It, to me, seemed fairly supportive as far as he could do in terms of the fans, talking about being the Celtic fans in terms of coming onto the pitch. It was coming on to celebrate the victory on penalty kicks. Did say, obviously, there's going to be police inquiries, Scottish Football Association inquiry. There's going to be an independent review, and so kind of saying that Celtic will have their input into the police review and the SFA independent panel, and then that they're going to obviously then abide by whatever the decisions are. But in essence, I don't think there's anything that Celtic can really do in terms of influencing independent police inquiries and independent football association inquiries. He stayed clear of a lot of the politics of things. He was fairly supportive as far as he could do of the Celtic fans that came onto the pitch. Good evening to you as well, head of the Vatican State 2025. Lovely to have you on. So but in essence, there's a police inquiry, there's an independent football association inquiry going on, and there's also court cases, there's police cases, there's someone, the man who attacked the Celtic coach and attacked a Celtic player. He was up in Glasgow court today. He's lost one of his jobs already. And so, in essence, you shouldn't really discuss court cases, police cases, all these kind of things in a public forum. No, I don't remember that at all. I think Strangelove the Doctor, the idea was just, in essence, to put forward Celtic's point of view that this is what's happening. So in essence, my feeling was that Brian Wilson's statement on behalf of Celtic was a lot milder than the Rangers version had been. I think Rangers realise that they've got far more things to answer for. However, coming onto the pitch is a criminal offence in Scotland and in England, for that matter. There's different gradations of those sorts of things. From the level of arrest post-game, it doesn't sound like that the police have got involved at all in having any Celtic fans, etc., arrested for coming onto the pitch. Sounds like the Rangers fans, some of the Rangers fans who came on and were guilty of violent conduct, the one that attacked the Celtic coach, they're all facing court cases and police cases, etc. So I don't think, and that's part of the reason I think that the Celtic, Brian Wilson, etc., can't comment too much further, other than saying that Celtic this is what Celtic think, and we're going to take part in the inquiry. We're going to make our inputs into the two different things. We're going to work with Rangers and the SPFL to decide ticket allocations for the Celtic Park game against Rangers after the split. People were saying that Rangers will get 2,500. I think at this point, given the fact we don't know when that game's going to be, whether it's going to be the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, or the 5th of the post-5 fixtures, one would guess that it'll be done on a Sunday. One would guess that it won't be the 5th and final fixture. So I don't think at this point they could actually guarantee what that's going to be, because the police have got to have their input, the Glasgow City Council has got to have their input, the Safety Commission is going to have it in. No, so basically, so Brian Wilson released a statement this evening. I read it briefly just before I started the live stream. There is a video that Celtic FC's put out of something, either an interview or him just giving a statement on the video. I don't know. I didn't watch that bit. But my feeling was the Celtic statement was quite bland, supportive in general of fans, recognising the Celtic fans in terms of pitch invasion, came on to celebrate the victory. There's very limited suggestion that there was any violent conduct from Celtic fans. There was definitely flares thrown into the Celtic end, and there was the odd flare thrown back out the Celtic end towards the stewards, the police, and the Rangers fans. Other than that, there didn't appear to be any violent conduct that I could see on television. I wasn't there. If anybody was there, they might know better. There's also lots of stories in the media, the courts, the police, about fans coming through the turnstiles without tickets. There are stories of graffiti and damage to the seats and stuff in the Broom Loan End stand. I don't know any of that. Certainly read accounts from people who were actually in that section on Sunday, such as the Falkirk player Brian Graham, saying he's not going to take his kids to football again because of the feeling and the violence and the threat of etc. on the day. So anyway, as I say, it's now all in the hands of the police, the courts, and the SFA independent inquiry. And I think personally that's probably the best thing to do at this point, is leave it at that, see what the outcome of all these various different inquiries is, see what the court case is, see whether there's any further repercussions regarding fans coming through the turnstiles without tickets, any repercussions regarding the vandalism of seats at both ends of the ground, the graffiti, etc., and take what the courts, the police, and the SFA inquiry say, and then take it from there. My personal feeling is that I'm sorry, I've lost the comment off the screen, but basically, if fans break the rules, if fans are aggressive, fight with stewards, fight with police, damage property, those things for me are serious, and so and it does spoil the game, spoil the experience for the 99% of fans who go just to watch a game of football. I was saying to Little Miss David 67 a couple of actually last night, I've only actually ever been scared twice at a game of football. Once when it was a Scotland international and there was a lot of violence and disruption and bad behaviour amongst the Scotland fans at that game, and there was also an incident again. It was can't remember exactly what the team it was, but Celtic were playing against a Polish team, and there were some pretty horrible scenes between some Celtic fans and some Polish fans. A lot of rather nastiness and aggression and violence and racism and all kinds of horrible stuff going on. So those are the two times I actually felt quite scared at a game of football. Yes, Lauren, I totally agree. But as we're saying, broken seats, graffiti. If there was any throwing of missiles, coming through the turnstiles without tickets, coming through the turnstile with tickets, then creates a lot of fans in an area for which there aren't any seats for the fans. So all these things are actually issues that do need to be criticised and not supported. So. And I think from what I've read so far, Rangers are acknowledging that the majority of the violence came from their end, but they are also saying that there was other incidents such as the turnstiles, the stewards, the graffiti, the damage to all the seats, etc. So, however, my personal feeling is it's far better to leave all those things to the authorities, and we can start concentrating more talking about football. Anyway. Yes, smell the glove. Yes, so totally agree. That there are lots and lots of things that went on Sunday that all need reviewing. It does sound like the police are reviewing it, the SFA is reviewing it. Celtic and Rangers are going to take part in these inquiries and work with various different things. With all games, they have to work with the police. With all games, they have to work with for safety certificates and so on. So, hopefully, like everything else this season, Celtic will learn lessons. Rangers will learn lessons. The stewards will learn lessons. The police will learn lessons, and things will be better in the future. in general terms, you're entirely right. Fans shouldn't go onto the pitch. The fans shouldn't go onto the pitch. It's against the law in Scotland, and in England, and in virtually every other footballing country in the world. Going on the pitch, and particularly if you go on the pitch and cause problems, it's supposed to lead to the club rescinding your season ticket or rescinding your ability to get tickets, and also can potentially let the courts put a football banning order stopping you going to any football stadium for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, etc. And obviously, when you commit a crime like the Rangers supporter, or whatever you want to call them, that attacked the Celtic coach and attacked a Celtic player, that leads to court time. That leads to maybe losing your job. He's lost his football coach, one of his football coaching part-time job, and could lead potentially, depending on how the courts look at it, could lead to prison sentence, could lead to various other different things. Also, almost certainly going to lead to him losing his ability to go to football matches for years and years and years, if not forever. So yes, Lauren, two wrongs don't make a right. So I think, in essence, personally, if Celtic fans misbehaved, if Celtic fans broke the law, if Celtic fans broke through the turnstiles, if Celtic fans damaged the Rangers stadium, if they damaged with graffiti relating to the Ibrox disaster, all those things should be, the courts, the police, banning orders, all these things should be out there. Just the same as would be the case for Rangers fans who do those sorts of things if they came to Celtic Park. There has been incidents of vandalism and graffiti and stuff in the Rangers section at Celtic Park, toilets, etc., being broken as well. So I completely and totally agree. Fans coming onto the pitch to celebrate the victory is excusable, but it's against the law. And by doing something that's against the law, that I can guarantee that 99% of us who drive a car have broken the law on multiple occasions. Doesn't mean going at 90 miles an hour on a motorway. It's still against the law, but a lot of us do it. We don't get caught for it. The police don't always charge you for different things as well. And as I said, it would not appear so far that any of the Celtic supporters who came onto the pitch solely or came onto the perimeter of the pitch have faced any form of charges. Maybe they will over the next few weeks. Maybe they're still putting together identities and names and so on. I don't know. But it's against the law. Things that are against the law, they're against the law. Vandalising things is against the law. Coming into a football ground without a ticket, bursting through stewards, damaging disabled gates, fire doors, all these things that are against the law. We shouldn't really be excusing them. Anyway, I would love, if we could, to get back to talking about football, talking about the performance on Sunday. What things people thought went well, what things people thought didn't go well, who played well, who didn't play well. Are the things that O'Neill and Maloney did well? Are things that O'Neill and Maloney did badly? Some of the substitutions I was a bit surprised with. I was very surprised to see Vuka being brought on at that point. I thought Dyson Maide was doing okay. I thought Yang was doing okay. I think taking off one made some sense. I just didn't really think taking off Maida and Maida and Yang and throwing on Forrest and Vuka worked particularly well, especially with there being about 20 minutes of normal time still to go at that point. If it had been an extra time substitution, Mvuka is a player with pace. He may have been a good player to use once the game opened up a bit. Well, amongst CSC, yes. For me, one could also look at the. I think we are lacking quality up front, but we also lacked an awful lot of creativity on Sunday. What was really quite disappointing for me was also we did get, I think, about 4 or 5 corner kicks in the game. None of the corner kicks, I think they pretty much were all from McCowan. Certainly in the first half, they're all from McCowan. None of the corner kicks in the first half were the least bit good. Although, admittedly, the Dyson Maida goal was off a recycled corner kick that went back to McCowan, who hit a super cross in second time around. Unfortunately, Liam Scales was just a second or two too late coming back from his offside position to get himself back onside to head flick it on. So I think it's a sort of chicken and the egg type of thing. Personally, Wyoming CSC, that we're lacking a bit of quality up front, but we're also lacking a bit of quality in creating chances for Maida or Yang or Tuneki or Chavanchara or Adamu or whomever's playing the main central striker position. As I said, other than the Dyson Maida header, Celtic didn't really, from my memory, have any other real chances on the Rangers goal apart from some goal mouth scrambles relating to corners and balls into the box. But we didn't really create anything apart from that Maida one. Undoubtedly, for me, hopefully also for Martin O'Neill, Sinisalo has to be our goalkeeper to the end of the season. Pat McLaughlin, we're lacking that bit of cutting edge and quality in every single position, in every single sector. Although, to be fair, I think personally, our 5 defenders that played on Sunday, I thought all of them had good games. Arojo and Scales at fullback. I thought Scales did a really good job at fullback, given the fact he's not the fastest player. He marked Skov Olsen there, the Rangers right winger, out the game so much that he ended up going off the pitch. Arojo controlled Mikey Moore far better than before. Rangers overlapping fullbacks, the Belgian guy and Sterling were not as dangerous in this Sunday's game as it had been the previous Sunday. Trusty, I thought, did a brilliant job in the middle of defence, controlling things, blocking things, tackling, intercepting. The 2 young guys, Arthur and Murray, I thought they both played very well. Sinisalo's been super. So I think actually our defence of the 3 different parts of the team, the defence is the one part that's maybe got the best. I'm not so sure this is the worst Celtic team in 35 years. You may well be right. It's a matter of opinion. This is not a great Celtic team. If you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Jota, if you added to this team, if you added a fully fit Callum McGregor, I think he's been struggling with injury all season. You've maybe got a stronger and stronger team. I think we didn't replace some players. We thought we had replaced some players with transfers. They haven't worked out terribly well. I think this season, Benjamin Negrin's been a really good player for us. Lots of goals, lots of assists. I think Kieran Tierney, Kieran Tierney this season in the Scottish Premiership has scored as many goals this season as he had in his whole career up until coming back to Celtic. So in all his years as a Celtic player prior to moving to Arsenal in the Scottish Premiership, he's scored as many goals in that spell as he has this season. So he's had a really good season in terms of Celtic. He's got 7 assists this season, which equals his best ever season previously for Celtic. So he's been a success. If you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Jota, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Jota, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Alistair Johnson, if you added Carter Vickers, if you added Scov Olsen, it's a good job that we didn't get him, because at various points over the last year, 18 months, Scov Olsen has been rumoured to be a player that Celtic were going to get. For me, he's been massively disappointing. In terms of a quality of football, he's been massively disappointing. The fact that he's playing for Rangers and he's not playing well gives me some comment. For me, Scov Olsen reminds me an awful lot of Fabio Silva, a player with talent who just seems to have completely gone off the boil. Prior to moving to Rangers, he was playing. He dropped out the first team at whatever German side he was playing for. He dropped out the first team into the reserve team, dropped out the reserve team, and he was training with the academy boys. So he had really completely lost all his form with his parent club. No, he's sorry. Quite right, Pat McLaughlin. He is completely. So it's a good job we didn't sign him, because on loan or permanently, both of which were proposed at the point at various different points. Well, I'm not sure. Well, one could say that the season the season where Rangers won the league, for me, probably is a worse season than this season, in that we were miles and miles and miles and miles behind in the league. We got nowhere in the two cups that year. Didn't get anywhere in Europe that year. So I would personally think the 2021 season, the 2020-21 season would be worse than that. And I think certainly we had seasons in the 90s that were worse than this, but it's not been a good season. I'm not saying it's been a good season. However, if Celtic do go unbeaten in the next 11 games, I think there's a very, very, I think there's an extremely high chance that Celtic will do the double if they go 11 wins out of 11. And as I've said a couple of times before, in Ange Postecoglou's first season, we won something like 18 out of the last 20 games, went on a 20-game unbeaten run. In the Brendan Rodgers 23-24 season, we had 14 wins and 1 draw for our last 15 games. I think that kind of run of form, like we did in Ange Postecoglou's first season and Brendan Rodgers' first season of his second spell, if we had that sort of season, that sort of title run in under O'Neill, which I think is entirely possible, especially if we do get a fit McGregor, a fit Engels, and a fit Johnson back around about the international break. End time to go with these players. I do think, personally, with 10 days or so of training at Celtic over the international break, some of the players like Mvuka, Adamu, Chavanchara, etc., Arthur might settle a bit more into being Celtic players, get used to their teammates working out how best to give the ball to Adamu, Chavanchara, etc., etc. Yes. A very good sentiment, I think. I think we should try and, as best we can, get behind the players, get behind the managers, get behind the coaches, and then all support the team 100%, cheering them on to hopefully 11 wins out of 11. And as I said, if we win 11 games out of 11, that's going to get us at least get us the cup. And 11 games out of 11, I don't think Hearts are going to be able to go the rest of the season unbeaten. I think they're going to drop points probably against Motherwell. I think they'll drop 3 points to us at Celtic Park. I think they might actually struggle to play against Rangers at Ibrox, if they've still got to play Rangers at Ibrox. So I haven't seen anything official regarding Shankland and Devlin. I think probably they're probably going to get Shankland and Devlin back again around about the same time that we might well be getting McGregor, Engels, and Johnson back, i.e., around about the international break or a couple of weeks after that. Well, from what I can vaguely remember, they were expecting Devlin and Shankland to be back for the final 5 games of the season, which obviously starts towards the middle or the end of April. Right bang in the middle of April is the two cup semi-finals, and then after that you've got the top 6 and bottom 6 split. I think that's roughly when Shankland and Devlin are going to be back to play for them, although I haven't actually seen any definite details regarding that. So, looking at these games before and after the international break, I think Celtic being at home does give us an advantage over Motherwell. I would expect us to beat Motherwell on Saturday. I would expect us to go off and beat Dundee United away from home the following Sunday lunchtime. That game's going to be live on TV. I would expect Celtic to go to Dundee and beat Dundee in the late Sunday afternoon game after the international break, and I would expect Celtic to win the home game against St Mirren. Obviously, we lost to Dundee United in a game where we massively dominated them under Wilfred Nancy. Could have scored 6, 7, 8, 9 goals. Dyson might have missed from 1 yard. Johnny Kenny missed about 4 or 5 easy chances to score in that game. We ended up losing 2-1. We then beat Dundee United quite comfortably the next time around under Martin O'Neill. We've beaten Dundee a couple of times easily under Martin O'Neill. We lost to them obviously under Brendan Rodgers. St Mirren, we've lost to them. We've beaten them. We've lost to them. We lost the League Cup final. Obviously, we beat them in a tight league match at the start of the season. We drew with them at the end of last season. So none of these are going to be easy games. But I think personally, Celtic can go 4 wins out of 4 before and after the international break of those games. But maybe I'm just too much of an optimist. I think my personal feeling with Yang is he's a player who has got talents, but he is an inconsistent player. I think he's probably one of the only maybe a couple of players who actually really benefited from the Wilfred Nancy way of football. He's developed 4 or 5 new strings to his bow. He wasn't actually much of a positive going forward influence against Rangers last Sunday, but in terms of winning the ball back in midfield, scrapping for the ball, intercepting, doubling up with Arojo on the right-hand side of the defence, I thought he did a great job of limiting the Rangers left-back getting forward and doubled up to help Arojo take control of Mikey Moore, who'd been such a big factor the previous Sunday. So I think Yang when Yang plays well, he's got lots of pace, he's got a talent for scoring goals. His final ball isn't very good, but then all these things you could also say about Dyson Maida, in that Dyson Maida, when he's in good form, scores goals, creates goals, tons of energy. I think one of Celtic's problems also has been that we had, for one season, we had Nicholas Kuhn, who was really very, very, very good going up and down that wing, which didn't mean that Yang for that season pretty much was backing up, coming on as a sub, etc., not getting an awful lot of regular starts, which I think always does restrict a player. hopefully not something I've said official PN2BF. Yeah, smell the glove. Well, there probably will be the odd time, I would guess, that we might be playing on a Sunday and Hearts or Rangers might be playing on the Saturday, but certainly any kind of, if we're a game behind or a game ahead, it's only going to be for 24 hours or so. Yeah, it's a good point, Green for Go 1969, which comes back to one of my theories, is that Celtic already know who their manager is going to be after the summer, which might suggest that there is already an agreement with Ferencváros, let's say, for the sake of example, for Robbie Keane to become our manager, or maybe a manager who is involved either in the World Cup qualifiers over the next few weeks or actually in the World Cup is being lined up to be Celtic's manager. So candidates like that would be Graham Potter, who's the current Sweden caretaker manager. They've got some World Cup qualifiers. Obviously, if they qualify through that, they're in the World Cup in the summer. Roberto Martinez is the Portugal manager. A lot of suggestions that he is wanting to leave international football and come back to club management. And Craig Bellamy, he seems to be back. Interestingly, Craig Bellamy's back on the radar. They've obviously got World Cup qualifiers coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously, if they didn't qualify for that, Wales would be out of the World Cup full stop, which might mean that he is willing to leave Welsh international football and come back to be Celtic's head coach manager. Some suggestions also that Jens Bertil Askew of Motherwell has been lined up. So to come a wee bit of a rambling bit there, but in essence, it could be that Celtic already know who their manager is going to be as of June, July onwards, and so that Celtics internally have already been working with these people on a list of players that they're going to scout, a list of players they're going to start negotiations with, a list of players where Celtic are going to get in contact with agents and clubs and stuff to explore transfer fees, etc. So it may be Celtic already knows who their manager is for June, July onwards. And it depends on, for a couple of them, whether their teams qualify for the World Cup, or in the case of Roberto Martinez, when their team actually leaves the World Cup, with obviously Maloney being closely linked to Roberto Martinez. Again, maybe if Martinez is going to be the new Celtic manager, already Martinez and Maloney have been exploring players to be searching for. So it is interesting, Celtic being lined up with lots of players. But the other thing is Celtic get linked with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of players, 95% of which seems like it's just stories made up. Yes, Lauren 6348, I would say that with this particular lot, it certainly wouldn't appear that there's an awful lot of forward planning that happens. I would accept that. Well, smell the glove. He had relative success as a club manager, obviously, with Wigan and Everton. He was extremely successful as the manager of Belgium. He's been successful as the manager of Portugal. So at international level, he's certainly been very, very successful. At club management, he won Wigan their only ever trophy. Blusky 13. The stories was that Knutsen was one of the managers that Celtic did go and explore. Knutsen said he wasn't going to leave Bodø Glimt until Bodø Glimt were out of Europe. Lots of people assumed that was going to be at the end of the Champions League group stage. They, of course, got qualified through that, like we did the previous season. They then won their first playoff game. Looks like they're in a really good position actually to win their last 16 game. They're 3-0 up after the first leg against Sporting Lisbon. So Blusky 13. Celtic did pursue Knutsen, but Knutsen said he wasn't going to leave Bodø Glimt until Bodø Glimt were out of Europe. So there's nothing much. So if that's what he has said he's going to do, there's nothing much he can do to change his mind. He's already made his mind up. He's in a tremendously powerful position at Bodø Glimt. He's in essence got a job at Bodø Glimt for 5 or 10 years more because he's been so incredibly successful there. He's also created such a brilliant subculture and backroom team at Bodø Glimt as well that he doesn't have to leave Bodø Glimt unless he wants to try at a different club in the future, which some people do want to have a new challenge to their career. No, I'd say Lorden 6348. It's in essence, Knutsen with the success he has achieved at Bodø Glimt this season, particularly the fact that he's got them from the qualifiers qualify them from the group stage into the knockout stage, from the knockout stage into the next stage. It does look like he's got a really strong chance of getting Bodø Glimt into the last 8, which would be a major achievement for a team from that size of league. It's been a long time since a team from a small league like Norway's or like Scotland's has ever got that far. I say virtually every team who gets to the last 8 is from one of the big leagues. They've been slightly lucky with this round in that they drew a Portuguese club rather than the English club or a Spanish club or an Italian club, but I do completely agree that he probably has, again, got multiple potential options for next season. He's turned down several big jobs in the past. He turned down, reportedly, Ajax. He's turned down a few other teams in medium-sized European leagues before. There was some stories suggesting that he was keen to come to Celtic because of the size of club of Celtic, the fact that Celtic's such a big global brand. Whether that's true or not, again, all I can do is read the stories each day, and Chipper 67, you make a great point, but maybe a John McGlynn is a good option. My suspicion is that if Celtic did go for John McGlynn, that a gigantic proportion of the Celtic fans wouldn't be impressed. I think a lot of Celtic fans want big name players and big name managers, which is understandable. So I'm not convinced that the majority of the Celtic fan groups would be happy if Celtic went for the manager of Falkirk, the manager who's in his 50s, if not older. Obviously Jens Bertel Askew, much younger manager, more maybe an up-and-coming manager. But again, Jens Bertel Askew is looking at his past career, not actually a manager who's won very much apart from winning in the Faroe Islands. He moved on from there to Denmark and then on to Sweden with Gothenburg. However, he wasn't actually a winner. He's only actually won tournaments on the Faroe Island League. He's not actually won anything in 6 years as a club manager. So Chipper67, I think John McGlynn is a really tremendous manager. I think Bertel Askew is a really tremendous manager. However, moving from managing those sorts of clubs with that sort of budget and that sort of supporter base and that size of stadium, and also the level of expectation, if you're the Falkirk manager or the Motherwell manager, your level of expectation isn't particularly high. John McGlynn obviously was the manager of Hearts, I think, for a wee while. Wasn't a success there. Went down to Wraith Rovers, went to... so I think John McGlynn is a super manager. I think Jens Bertel Askew a super manager. The question is whether they can step up to be Celtic manager. And I think stepping up to be Celtic manager is quite a step up. And in terms of Scottish managers coming from other clubs, smaller clubs, to manage Celtic, Tommy Burns probably the last person like that. Tommy Burns managed Celtic really, really well for the whole time he was Celtic's manager. However, not an awful lot of success in terms of winning trophies and trophies and cups and leagues, because he was competing against an extremely high quality Rangers side who kind of bankrupted themselves to get players on big contracts and big salaries and big transfers. You make a really good point. Neil Lennon had 1 year as basically the reserve team manager at Celtic. However, Neil Lennon had spent his whole life playing top level football for Leicester, for Celtic especially. He had masses and masses of international experience. So he had actually played at high levels in Europe, internationally high levels in Europe for Celtic. He played in very, very strong English Premier League with Leicester. So yes, so Neil Lennon with limited experience as a manager, 1 year as a reserve team manager, although he had spent a long time obviously in and around Celtic. Neil Lennon, however, apart from the time that he managed Celtic, he's managing anybody else. He's had a pretty poor record, been sacked by quite a number of different clubs, had 2 or 3 jobs where he's only been the manager for a matter of months. I think he was manager in Cyprus for a few months, manager in Romania for a few months, got sacked by several different clubs all around Scotland and all around England. So see, I think it's better. I think it's better with the light on rather than off. I'll try switching other lights off. I'm sorry if the lights are bothering people. But I do actually have to have the light on, so I can't actually see otherwise. I've got all the lights off. Yep. Okay. Anyway. Really good point, David Grant. Certainly Celtic's aspirations, the Celtic fans' aspirations, tends to be much more in Europe than it is for Scotland. Because we've been so successful in Scottish football, there's a certain complacency that we're going to win everything in Scotland just by kind of almost turning up. So as I said, big admirer of John McGlynn, big admirer of Jens Belter Askew. But like any manager, the difficulty is stepping up. I think with a manager like Roberto Martinez, we know that he can manage high-quality players with Portugal and with Belgium. He can deal with players with big egos like Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the biggest egos in world football. The question would be whether a Jens Bertel Askew or a John McGlynn could deal with those sorts of things. I don't know. I think Wyoming CSC that there is a definite chance we could get Roberto Martinez because of his links with Sean Maloney, because of the fact that Roberto Martinez's wife's family is from central Scotland, the Motherwell area, etc. Obviously, Roberto Martinez had a short spell in Scottish football as a player. Well, Chipper 67, he qualified Belgium for every single World Cup. He qualified them for every European nations. He's done the same with Portugal. He won one of the League of Nations things with Portugal. So he has been successful as an international manager. Hasn't won the World Cup with Portugal or with Belgium, but then probably the expectation would be that Portugal and Belgium weren't really contenders to win the World Cup. He got them deep into those various different competitions. Fair enough. I'm not saying that I would personally want Roberto Martinez to be the manager. The stories that I was reading today are that Celtic have a final three of Craig Bellamy, Robbie Keane, and Jens Bertel Askew. Some other stories are suggesting that Roberto Martinez is in that final three rather than Craig Bellamy. Craig Bellamy a few months ago said he had no intention of leaving Wales, even if they didn't qualify for this World Cup. He wanted to carry on being the Welsh manager for several more seasons. Yes, it's standard practice for countries of those sorts to qualify for World Cups and European nations, but some teams don't always qualify for absolutely every. So you could say the same about Holland, you could have said the same about Italy, but those sorts of countries have missed some European nations and some World Cup qualifying campaigns. Holland went through a couple of seasons of poor results. They dropped out. They didn't qualify for absolutely every tournament. Italy missed out one tournament. So anyway. And yep, as Pat McLaughlin's saying, Ferencvaros, at least when I was last saw the results, the Ferencvaros were winning their game. So they've obviously gone. They're in line to get into the last eight. So can't remember off the top of my head where our Ferencvaros are in terms of the current Hungarian league. But he was a champion manager in Israel, been a champion manager in Hungary. He's managed to get Ferencváros through a couple of rounds of Europa League. Yep. So one could say that Robbie Keane, obviously, he's a lifelong Celtic supporter, reportedly, knows the club inside out for his whole life as a supporter, as a player, etc. Has highest level of experience, played for some of the biggest clubs in England, played a heck of a lot of games, obviously, for Ireland internationally. He's been a successful manager in 2 other countries, European success. So he ticks an awful lot of the boxes that Celtic would want. A Celtic man, a man who knows the history of Celtic, a lifelong Celtic supporter. He played for Celtic, obviously, for 4 or 5 months on loan, scored an absolute bundle of goals. He was Celtic's top scorer that season, despite the fact he played about less than half the games that season. And he's been a success in 2 other countries, won leagues, won trophies. He's doing the same again this season, and he's taking his team a step or 2 further. Yep, quite right. So, right. Yep, proving himself in Europe. So, in essence, he's doing a lot of the things that we would want of a manager. Some Celtic fans aren't awfully keen on him because he managed in Israel. He seemed to quite quickly leave Israeli football, moved into Hungarian football. Has talked in the past about being Celtic being a job that he would consider. Who knows? Yes, well, again, if we did go for Roberto Martinez, he managed Wigan to their one and only trophy. He was a moderately successful manager at Everton, so he's managed in one of the highest quality leagues in the world. Has links to Scotland, has links to the area, has links to a member of staff who's already at Celtic. I think Martin O'Neill's been very, very important in Celtic this season, managing to come back from difficult positions. I think Maloney has been a big factor alongside Martin O'Neill. I think Sean Maloney and Mark Fotheringham do the gigantic majority of all the training sessions and tactical stuff comes from them. I thought it was quite interesting that the person who was doing the final team talk before the penalty shootout was Sean Maloney. It was him who was in the centre of the big circle, the big huddle. It was Maloney who was doing all the tactical stuff, the motivation, etc. Also, that was quite interesting that O'Neill in his post-match interview was saying he was surprised that Rio Hatate was one of the 5 penalty takers. I would have thought that O'Neill would be the person deciding who the 5 takers were. So it suggests it would probably Maloney along with Scales and maybe McGregor, who were going round seeing who was willing to be the 5 penalty takers. And massive respect for Hatate stepping up, but also massive respect for Sorry, I'm having a wee bit of problems with my screen there. Sorry. where was I? So massive respect for basically, I was going to say for Trusty stepping up to be the second penalty taker. Big respect for Chavin Chara, who's with us on loan. Big respect for Hatate, and apparently the fifth penalty taker would have been Liam Scales. Again, big respect for him. Reportedly, Liam Scales had never taken a penalty kick ever before in his life, apart from in training and stuff. Couldn't find any record of Austin Trusty ever having taken a penalty kick as a professional. Chavin Chara, actually, in terms of Celtic's current squad, is one of two players who has a good record, along with Benjamin Neegren as penalty takers. Unfortunately, Neegren wasn't on the pitch at the end. Obviously, Kelechi and Acho and Arne Engels have got good records. Yep, okay, fair enough. I had a lot of respect for them stepping up to take penalty kicks in a penalty shootout, knowing that the stakes of missing those penalties were incredibly high. Obviously, two Rangers players hit the ball miles over the bar. Taverny hit the bar. Gazima hit the ball miles over the bar. I admired, particularly Trusty, and for stepping up. Hatate missed that penalty 7 days ago. He stepped up. He hit a brilliant penalty kick. Chavin Chara hit a brilliant penalty kick. So, however, if you feel it's just their job to take penalty kicks and penalty shootouts, never having done a penalty shootout kick before, which was the case for Trusty, the case for Scales as well, I think big respect for both those people. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. Yes, I thought Viljami Sinisalo in a lot of ways did a much better job than Butland in the penalty shootout. I thought he got in the head of the Rangers players far better than Butland had done. What I also really thought was brilliant was each time a Celtic player was coming up to take a penalty kick, Sinisalo gave the ball to him. I presume he also gave him some form of pep talk and encouragement and so on. I suspect it also helped the players calm themselves down just before they took that penalty kick. So massive big, I think, again, you can say he's just doing his job. Big respect for him, putting all four of the Rangers players off, making two of the Rangers players miss, and massively supporting his teammates, Trusty, Hatate, Chavin Chara, and Oxlade-Chamberlain as they came up to take the penalty kicks. I've taken, obviously, in low-level football, schools football, university football, etc., town, village football, hundreds of penalty kicks, but never have I ever had to walk forward from the halfway line to a penalty spot to take a penalty kick. And so big respect to them. Yes, so hopefully Sinisalo is our first choice goalkeeper for the rest of the season. And I would be happy if Sinisalo was our first choice goalkeeper for the next few seasons. From memory, he's in his early mid-20s, so he could easily have a good 10, 15 years as a Celtic goalkeeper. What I particularly liked about his goalkeeping style was he's so much better coming for the ball. He's so much better coming to the edge of his box to claim long balls over the top. He's really good at coming out his box to clear balls over the top. Takes control of his 6-yard box at corner kicks and free kicks and so on, and does a lot of the things that Kasper Schmeichel this season just hasn't been doing. That's a good question. I was trying to, my little Miss David 67, my daughter, she is someone who's able to do lip reading, and for a variety of reasons, she taught herself sign language and taught herself lip reading skills. And so I was trying to get her to lip read what Sinisalo was saying to the Rangers players as they stepped up and stuff. But unfortunately, you couldn't get a proper camera angle to see his lips, and obviously the microphones were switched off, so you couldn't actually hear what he was saying. But it's a good point as to whether Kasper Schmeichel would be happy being the number 2 on the bench for the rest of the season. I think in terms of performances, Sinisalo deserves it to the end of the season. Question is whether, in that case, Ross Doohan would be the number 2 goalkeeper to the end of the season. I suspect you're being a wee bit sarcastic and ironic and so on. I suspect that he was saying things that were not terribly complimentary about the Rangers players, and I suspect he wasn't really sympathising with Tavernier or Gazima as they hit the ball onto the bar and over the bar, respectively. But he certainly did seem to get in the head of the 4 Rangers players who took their penalties. 2 missed. The other 2 could easily have missed. I think Kasper Schmeichel is 39 going on 40. I think Kasper Schmeichel, the fact that Kasper Schmeichel hasn't got into negotiations with Celtic to extend his contract past the end of this season probably means that he's already decided that he's retiring at the end of the season one way or another. So I wouldn't be too surprised, especially if Denmark don't qualify through their final World Cup qualifying 2-legged type of thing over the international break. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Kasper Schmeichel announced his retiral at the end of that if Denmark get knocked out. And he may well also announce that he's going to retire from international and club football after the World Cup. I think that might be a wee bit unfair in that obviously I thought his performances last season, up until when he got injured playing for Denmark against Portugal, were actually very, very good. I thought he got rushed back into the side by Brendan Rodgers after his shoulder injury playing for Denmark. And I think it's since his shoulder injury against Portugal onwards that he's not actually been terribly consistent. And I think he's got a chronic problem with his shoulder. So as well as having whatever illness he had a couple of weeks ago, he also was getting an injection, one would presume, into his shoulder. And certainly the goals against Stuttgart that he let in the 4-1 defeat and the goals he let in a couple of other games, he really does seem to struggle diving to his left, which was diving onto the shoulder he hurt against Portugal. So I would say it's basically since the Portugal Denmark match where he dislocated his shoulder and tore ligaments and muscles and stuff in the shoulder. That's onwards. Since then, he's really struggling. And I do think that all 3 of Celtic's managers this season showed too much loyalty to Kasper Schmeichel when he was struggling, probably for form and probably for fitness. Yes, and quite right, Pat McLaughlin. There were some vague indications that the Danish manager might not be selecting Kasper Schmeichel for their vital 2 European World Cup qualifier games. So that actually could also be you're quite right, could actually be a really good indicator as to what they feel. As I say, it has appeared to me, particularly Brendan Rodgers and Martin O'Neill, have shown a lot of loyalty to Kasper Schmeichel to be our number 1 goalkeeper. Under Wilfried Nancy, Sano had a couple of games, but the great majority were given to Kasper Schmeichel. He didn't have a particularly good time as a Celtic goalkeeper under Wilfred Nancy. He was guilty, I thought, partly for the first and second Rangers goals in that 3-1 defeat. He was very much at blame for the third goal in that 3-1 defeat. He, I thought, was rather suspect for the two Motherwell goals, partly. If we're talking about Celtic, I would have Viljami Sinisalo to the end of the season. And if there's any doubts about Kasper Schmeichel's shoulder, I would have Ross Doon as the backup goalkeeper. The fact that Schmeichel still seems to be needing injections into his shoulder to be able to play suggests he shouldn't be playing, and he should be away getting his shoulder fixed once and for all. It may be he's trying to hang on because of the Danish World Cup qualifier games over the international break. Or it may be he's trying to hang on because he knows this is the last professional season he's going to have. But definitely, I would have Sinisalo in goals. If we had the Kasper Schmeichel of previous times, up until the start of the season, so the previous Kasper Schmeichel we had, I think he probably, on the basis of experience, might well have been ahead of Sinisalo. But for me, Sinisalo has jumped 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of Schmeichel this season. Okay. So I honestly don't know how I would organize having other people taking part in the live stream. The package I've got for the live stream, I'm not quite sure whether it does allow me to have guests on or not. Because the channel is not tremendously successful in terms of viewer numbers and earnings, etc., I don't actually have an awful lot of spare cash for investing in high quality live stream packages that allows you to have 2, 3, 4 people on the live stream. This is just for me a bit of fun, but if the channel did go to more and more success, and I could afford the amount of money it takes to have 2, 3, 4 people all on the live stream at the same time, all talking, etc., I wouldn't be against it. But I don't actually have, in terms of my financial situation, having decided to stop working a couple of years younger than I was planning to stop working. Money is a wee bit tight for me at the moment, in terms of investing hundreds and thousands of pounds into this channel. So basically, to cut a long story short, I started the David 67 channel 2.5 years ago, because I had decided to stop working a couple of years younger than I'd originally planned to stop working. I just basically got a bit bored and fed up and felt like I wasn't going to, for a variety of reasons, go any further with what I was doing at the time. And it was suggested that it'd be good to do something to keep myself physically and mentally active. and so started doing the channel. So, and then after a wee while, people said, "Oh, why don't you do a live stream?" So I started doing a live stream, and I've been doing a live stream all this season. But in essence, it's just a bit of fun. Yes, official PN 2B. If I fully accept that money is tight for everybody as well. Just I at the moment I haven't got the money to invest in the people who do this live stream are a company called StreamYard, and they offer a free live stream package, which gives you basically what this is, which I think I might be allowed to have one guest. But if I want to have more than one guest, or if I want to have one guest regularly, it's £20-30 a month. It's 300 and something pounds a year, and I don't have personally the money at this point, the money to make that, to be able to. Thank you, Gabby boy. I'm glad I do have some people's interest. It's lovely. Absolutely, I'm tremendously happy that anybody tunes in, that anybody wants to share their opinions and have a chat with me. Yes. So yes. So if people do click the like button, if anybody who's not subscribed already clicks the subscriber button, all these things help. Doing the live stream certainly has got me more viewers and more subscribers. The numbers have gone up quite nicely over the last 6 months or so, in terms of competing against the Ryan 118s and Celtic AMs and the Celts are here and Come On the Hoops and ACSOM and all these other people. I'm just I'm a Lowland League person to their Scottish Premiership level channels. However, a lot of them do the channels for their living. I'm just doing this for fun, and any wee bits of money the channel does earn tend to get reinvested in better IT for the channel, or reinvested in games for tickets for games. To be thoroughly honest, the YouTube badge I've got in the back actually was a present from my daughter. It's not an official YouTube award, but my daughter very kindly got me that YouTube placard as a present for reaching 1,000 subscribers, which was last season. At the moment, I don't get along to hardly any Celtic games at Celtic Park or away from home, and that's part of where any profits or any money that I earn through the channel gets ploughed into, as I say, IT for the channel, for tickets for some of the Celtic men's matches or some of the Celtic women's matches, because my daughter, little Miss Davis 67, she likes watching the men's team, but she also likes watching the women's team, and watching the women's team is a heck of a lot cheaper than going to watch the men's team. So we do, my daughter and I do go and see the odd game of women's football. Thank you very much, slabbering cabbage. I'm glad you think I'm brilliant, and I do apologise. And again, the fact that I've got a ceiling light, and I've got 2 angle poised lights to try and create a bit of light on a dark on a dark evening. It will be easier, I suspect, when we get into the spring, into April and May, and throughout the summer, because we'll have sunlight coming in the window that's in front of me. Yes, Celtic do have a women's team. Celtic's women's team they're starting on Sunday in their version of the split. They've got the women's league splits into 6 teams and 4 teams. They are in basically a 3-way battle for second place. They've got there are a couple of wins behind the current leaders, Glasgow City. So the women's team are doing well this season. A couple of seasons ago, they won the Scottish Women's Premier League. They qualified for Europe, which is the first time any Scottish team had qualified for the Champions League group stage. They then had a really poor season last season, partly due to playing in the Champions League. It really affected their league form. They then had a massive turnover of players, a massive turnover. They lost their manager, who went off to manage in Sweden instead. But they've had a bit of a turnaround in form again with their new manager. So they do have the women's team is successful. The women's team also struggled a bit like the men's team has done in terms of getting them financed properly and invested properly. But it does appear over the course of 2026, second half of the season, that the women's team is getting better funding from the team and better funding from outside the team as well in terms of sponsorship and stuff. So anyway, so they have every chance of a top 2 finish in the league, which gets them into Europe next season, and got every chance of getting into the Scottish Women's Cup final across in May as well. So I have to say, Chipper 67, I have not seen ACSOM for a long time. It did feel as if the people on that channel tended to be the ones that Sky Sports and STV and stuff were interviewing a lot. I'm pretty sure they do it for a living. Quite a lot of the other channels very much have an angle on what they try and say. All I try and say on my channel, or this channel, not my channel, the David 67 channel, is what I think, and then I try and encourage other people, be it through the comment section or through the live stream, to say what they think. And as long as everyone's pleasant, polite, respectful, allows everyone to have their say, isn't rude, etc., I'm very happy for anybody to have any opinion they like. And I do try and make these things as inclusive and involving everybody. And then if Sligo Boy's got one particular point of view, that Chipper 67's got a different point of view, or Clashman Numpty, who's usually on these live streams, has a different point of view, that's all hunky-dory fine by me, as long as everyone's nice to each other. So to be thoroughly fair, the only other Celtic channel that I watch on a regular basis is the Celts Are Here channel. I like the chap Quinny who does that channel. I like the way that he analyzes football. I like the way that he presents his stories and his evidence, etc. I do watch Celtic AM a wee bit with Hamish Carton, who's now based in Australia, but I've kind of gone off him a lot for one reason or another. So the only other channel I actually really watch much of is the Celts Are Here. I don't know where Clashman Numpty is. We were having a wee chat a couple of days ago through the comment section. Quite often he doesn't join the live stream till a wee bit later on. Yes. Quinny, who does the Celts Are Here channel, at least does the one on YouTube. I don't know whether he's involved with the one that you get on the internet. I don't know, but Certainly, I like his manner. I like his way of speaking. I like his way of analysing football. He uses technology and analytical programs and stuff. He tends to say quite a lot of things that I find quite sensible. And when I do participate in his live streams as a viewer, he does also seem to try and get different points of view up on the screen as well. Yes, okay. I think that there's, as everybody's saying, there's lots and lots and lots of other Celtic channels out there. Right at the start, I watched a lot of different other channels. Used to watch Ryan 118 on a regular basis. I've stopped watching him altogether. Stopped watching quite a lot of other people as well. So I'm trying to get most of my stuff through this Celtic News Now amalgamation site, which has lots of different internet sites and journalists and stuff to read from. And as I do watch Celtic here on a fairly regular basis. Yes, he reminds everybody on a really regular basis. He's got coaching badges, etc., and he does. I think he breaks down games nicely. I think he breaks down the stats nicely, and I think he explains things well. And as he says, on a very, very regular basis, he's a proper, fully qualified coach, etc., and so knows what he's talking about. And I do honestly think it's actually a big shame that, and for me, a bigger shame that the Celtic aren't allowing the fan media groups to have access to press conferences and so on. So I do honestly think it's a big shame that the Celtic fan media aren't allowed to go to press conferences, aren't given the press packs, etc. And also even more disappointed that ban on Celtic fan media is also come over to the women's team as well. I think it's I think the women's team needs any kind of support, any kind of publicity, just to try and push them forward. Because I do think, if we're getting a bit serious, I think encouraging young women and girls and women in general to play sport is very, very important. And encouraging boys and young men to play sport is very, very important in terms of keeping Scotland as a healthy country. And so I think encouraging girls to play football or girls to play organised sports are very, very important things. So, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Sligo boy, if that's a compliment or not. I certainly I don't think there are many other live streams which go on for 3 or 4 hours to let people have lots and lots of opinions. I don't know. As I say, the whole point of doing this live stream for me is to have a nice chat with other Celtic fans, to share my opinions, to see what other people are thinking, also to learn potentially new players' names, new coaches' names. As I said, up until Clashman Numpty, who's not on this live stream so far this evening, up until him naming Wilfred Nancy as being very much an up-and-coming coach. I'd never heard of Wilfred Nancy either, apart from a wee bit watching Major League Soccer highlights. And say there are always new names in terms of players, coaches, etc. coming forward. And I do find that these live streams actually allow me to keep up to date with various different things, learn different people's theories about things, and quite often change the way I think about things as well. Yes, fair enough. There are quite a lot of the names that he puts forward. I think personally are a lot of players who are kind of out of Celtic's league in terms of the prestige of the league that player wants to play in. I couldn't agree more, David Grant. I think that, as I say, I think it's a big shame that the Celtic Football Club has cut ties with all the Celtic fan media. There doesn't seem, for one reason or another, quite the same force in terms of Celtic support organisations or the Celtic Foundation to restore the media, the Celtic fan media. There's certainly a lot more force and support behind getting the Green Brigade back into the ground, rather than letting all the fan medias have access to the club and the press packs and press conferences and stuff. But totally agree, David Grant. There's so much misinformation. It kind of harks back to something we were saying maybe half an hour ago regarding the number of players that Celtic get linked with. Every transfer window, there are tons and tons and tons of players that Celtic supposedly are about to sign, or not sign, or are pursuing. And I think it also creates, to an extent, a bit of a sense of disappointment, because according to the Daily Record and the Hail 67 site and this, that, and the other, Celtic are going for this player or that player or that player or that player. And it turns out Celtic were ever in the market for these players, because these players had already said they didn't want to come and play in Scotland, or didn't want to come and play for whatever, didn't want to come and play for Celtic because they wanted to play in a bigger league, etc. So, yes, I think in essence that is also something I try to do in terms of this channel, is the fact that we're all Celtic supporters. We should all be rallying around each other and rallying around the club and the players and the coaches and the backroom staff and everybody at the club. I think we should all be making everybody's job at Celtic easier, rather than making everyone at Celtic's job more difficult. And I think players who are struggling to settle in at Celtic, people like maybe Joel Mvuka being the most obvious example, or Michel Onge-Balikwisha, I think supporting those players might help them in the long run become Celtic players, because both Balikwisha and Mvuka in previous clubs and previous leagues have been actually very successful players. At Celtic, they've both been massively disappointment. Not convinced that booing and hissing Kasper Schmeichel is terribly helpful in terms of his confidence. You could well be right there. You could well be right. I'm not massively keen on the Celtic FC TV YouTube channel. I don't think the standard of journalism on it is very good. Don't think the standard of interviews is very good. A lot of the press conference you see with the written media and the TV professional media, I find rather boring and humdrum and repetitive. I think having Celtic fan media, etc., at those sorts of things actually would just probably give a bit of a different angle about things, and a bit of maybe a left field style of questions, etc. I think Celtic want to try and control the public relations and control the media. I think they have more of an ability to control the print media, the records, the heralds, the independents, etc. And STV and Sky and all those other different ones. You make a good point, Tone 70. I don't think Celtic, in terms of their media, are that professional. However, I don't actually think many football clubs are very professional in terms of managing the media. Watching other football managers and other clubs doing their press conferences and their interviews, I don't think a lot of them are that good at managing the media either. And I think it's one of many things that Celtic should do better and better in the future. I think Celtic as a football club should be a lot more open than they are. However, all football clubs should be far more open with the fans than they are. People like Michael Nicholson should be out and about doing press conferences, doing interviews, doing videos with Celtic FC, doing stuff with Sky, etc. But he's silent. Same with an awful lot of people. At the moment, the great majority of the face of any football club, be it Celtic or any other club, is the first team coach stroke manager. Not many other teams put up, other than players, but not many people, any other team puts up their executives, their chair people, their board members, etc. to speak. And I think all these things should be happening. And as I've maybe said a few times before, a lot of American sport, the backroom people, the management people, the chief executives, etc., are much more out and about in terms of the media, and much more available for scrutiny and cross-examination and interviews from fans and journalists. And so I think quite a lot of things that European football and British football could learn from American sports media. If we're talking about Wilfred Nancy, I agree with whoever was saying that. I think Wilfred Nancy would have been a successful manager at Celtic had he come in last summer or this summer coming, because it would have given him the whole pre-season to put in place his change of style. It would have given them a whole transfer window to bring in the right sorts of players and see which players at Celtic could adapt to his system. I think Celtic actually have currently a lot of players who would fitted well into his system, and quite a lot of the players would have learned the system. I think, unfortunately, 2 or 3 of Celtic's better players didn't fit Nancy's system and probably never would have fit Nancy's system. I don't think Callum McGregor had the fitness or endurance to play the role that he was given in the Nancy system. I don't think Liam Scales had the fitness to play and the endurance to play the role that he would have had in Nancy's system. I don't think Anthony Ralston had that either. Had that been Alcide Johnston in the Ralston position, we would have been far better. And we can belittle Major League Soccer in terms of quality of football. In terms of quality of players, quality of opposition, etc., the Major League Soccer is considerably higher in terms of world rankings of quality of football and quality of players than the Scottish League. And Nancy's system, admittedly not in his last system at Columbus Crew, because that was partly clouded by, or partly overtaken by the fact that they got so far in the Central American equivalent of the Champions League. They got to the final which was the first time any American team had ever done that. But they did do the double the season before. He won he won with Montreal as well. So I do think he would have. I think he would have been a really good manager for Celtic had he come in last summer, or actually this summer coming, in that he could have had 3 months, 2-3 months to shape the team, 2-3 months to shape the players, bring in players, get rid of players, etc. But he was, I think, stupid and naive to think he could change Celtic's whole system in essence overnight. He came in, and 3 days later we were playing against Hearts in possibly the most important game of the season. And as I've said before, maybe people are fed up with me saying it, the first half out against Hearts didn't get out of their half. Celtic had 5 chances to score. Dyson Maida missed 2 sitters. Dyson Maida took the ball basically off Benjamin Nygren's toes from about 8 yards out. Nygren would have had a left foot shot back across the goalkeeper. Instead, Dyson Maida knocked it past the post. However, football is to an extent about ifs and buts and what ifs and stuff, but in the end, it's about getting the ball in the back of the net. And under Wilfred Nancy, Celtic were very poor at getting the ball in the back of the net, despite the fact that we created so many more chances under him than we did other managers. And the defence was very, very poorly organised, and say quite a number of our midfielders and defenders didn't have the fitness and endurance to attack in numbers and defend in numbers. And to an extent, if we are giving praise to people like Jens Bertel Askew, he had the whole of the summer to change around the way that Motherwell was. They bought players in, they changed the system, they changed the tactics, they changed the formations. Derek McInnes at Hearts, again, was able to shape his transfer window, change the players, change the tactics, etc. So I think having a really strong pre-season does give you a big advantage, and which makes it all the more impressive how O'Neill and Maloney and Fotheringham, etc., have done so well coming in post Brendan Rodgers and post Wilfred Nancy's spell to put things back on an even keel and keep us in the running for the double over the rest of the season. And if we go 11 wins out of 11 in our last 11 games, which I think Celtic are able to do, particularly if we do get 3 or 4 players back in the near future from injury, just to give us more power and depth off the bench and a better ability to rest and rotate players. I think Celtic will have the best squad to end the season. Hearts starting to run into problems with player injuries, suspensions, fatigue. They've done not too badly without Devlin and Shankland. Yes, completely, totally agree. He was stupid, naive, pig-headed, whatever you want to say, to make those changes mid-season without the benefit of a proper pre-season, etc. And I didn't think he was of that mentality to make such sweeping changes. Also interesting, to the best of my knowledge, he hasn't actually moved on to any other. No one else has taken him on in terms of the manager. There were rumours that he was going to there were a couple of jobs in France. But none of those things have borne any fruit. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Charlie McLaughlin. Wilfred Nancy had arrogance, but then an awful lot of football managers and football people have a lot of arrogance as well. One could not say that Brendan Rodgers didn't have quite a large degree of arrogance to his way of managing and speaking to people. A lot of successful football managers have a fairly strong streak of arrogance. Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola, they're not the nicest of people. They actually are quite arrogant, self-confident, and self-promoting, etc. So Martin O'Neill is a different style of manager, and Postecoglou slightly different style of manager. But a lot of football managers actually are incredibly confident, incredibly arrogant in their way that they behave, and so I did think it was a bit unusual. People criticised Nancy for being arrogant, but then were quite happy for Brendan Rodgers to be equally arrogant in his way of interacting with people. Anyway, just my opinion. Oops. Yes. Strangelove the Doctor. I suspect you're quite right. I suspect that he will end up either back in Major League Soccer or probably more likely end up managing in the French Ligue 1. There are a couple of teams in France who will be looking for new managers for next season, and I suspect that he's at the top of a list of 2 or 3. And the report was he turned down a couple of teams in France to take the Celtic job. It's interesting that we're saying everything that so Celtic losing those games was only due to the fact that Wilfred Nancy was the manager. As I've said before, if Dyson Meinica took his chances, if Johnny Kenny took his chances, if several Celtic players took their chances in the games against Hearts, Dundee United, Rangers, we would have won all those games very easily. We had so many chances in that Dundee United match. We had a lot more chances than Hearts in that Hearts match. We had a lot more chances than Rangers in the first half of that Rangers game. We still actually had more chances than Rangers in the whole game, first half and second half, just we didn't put them in the back of the net. And at the same time, Dundee United put a lot of their chances away. St Mirren had about 5 attacks and put 3 in the net. Part of that was poor defending, poor organisation at corner kicks. But then that's been a Celtic failing under Brendan Rodgers. Previous to that as well, we always have been quite fragile for corner kicks and high balls into the box. We had difficulties when Joe Hart was the keeper. We had difficulties with Kasper Schmeichel as the keeper. It does appear, to be thoroughly fair to O'Neill and Maloney, etc., that we're much better at defending high balls, etc., into the box. In general, it'll be interesting when we play Hearts in the post split games to see whether our recent good form defending the box, such as the Stuttgart game, the Rangers games, whether we can carry it through against Hearts as well. Because when Hearts drew with us 2-2, it was still a couple of high balls and second balls that cost us those games. Cost us the wins in those games. Yes, Scales was playing out wide on the left. Though I think Scales was playing left centre backs and Tierney was playing as the left wing back. But the problem was in the system that Nancy had, McGregor and Engels had to get back and to defend as much as they got forward to attack. And McGregor was really struggling to be at both ends of the pitch. Also, players like Ralston struggled to do his role. Scales struggled to do his role. Chinecki struggled to do his role. And at the same time, Celtic created lots of chances, which primarily Maeda and Kenny missed. Maeda has missed 20 great chances for Celtic this season. Last season, he missed about 4 or 5 top-level chances. This season, he's missed 20. That's a massive difference between last season and this season. And I think that's one of Celtic's biggest problems. And also, one of Celtic's biggest problems is star players like McGregor and Schmeichel and Hatate until recently have all been way below their best form. And Maeda has been below their best form. It will be interesting to whether, in theory, Rangers are only Rangers are 6 points behind Hearts, 1 point behind Celtic. So I think Rangers can very happily say that they're still very much in the title race. If Celtic are in the title race at 58 points, 5 points behind, Rangers are 1 point further back. I think Motherwell theoretically are still in the title race, although probably for them to regain 10 points in 9 games is probably a wee bit difficult. So Wolfenanti played 3-4-3 and Amarin played 3-4-3. The reason that Amarin got the Man United job is because he's been so incredibly successful at his previous club. The Roma side that played us has been playing 3-4-3 for several seasons with great success. So it's not so much the system, it's getting the players to play the system. And that's partly players taking on new roles. It's partly bringing in players better suited to the system. It's lots. So Amarin was unsuccessful at Man United, but do we blame Amarin for that, or do we blame the players for not doing their job? Because they are after all, professional footballers. Professional footballers actually should have the endurance and the energy to be able to play 90 minutes of high impact, high pace football. The fact that Ralston and McGregor and Scales all really struggled to play 90 minutes of high intensity football is a sign that maybe their fitness isn't as good as it should be, because they are professional athletes after all. So if someone like Trusty can play and Maeda can play 90 minutes at high speed, why can't McGregor and Scales and Ralston? Anyway, I think it's best for us to keep on looking forward. Nancy is a thing of the past. He's been gone. Maybe if we hadn't moved from O'Neill to Nancy to O'Neill, maybe we would have won the title. Who knows? Because that's not what happened. We can't say, oh, if this had happened and that had happened, if O'Neill had been the manager all season, well, maybe something would be different. Maybe O'Neill's team would have struggled for form when it came into the intensity of two games a week over the whole Christmas and New Year period. Maybe O'Neill's team would have struggled against with Roma and Hearts and St Mirren and all in quick succession. We don't know, because that's not what happened. It's not as if under O'Neill that we've been winning games really, really easily. We've struggled in quite a lot of games. We got thumped off the pitch by Midtjylland. We got thumped off the pitch by Stuttgart 4-1. So it's not as if every game under Martin O'Neill has been brilliant, easy wins. We've had a lot of scrapping wins over Dundee and St Mirren and Kilmarnock and so on and so on and so on. So all we can say is that we were in a poor position under Rodgers. We improved a lot under O'Neill in terms of our position. We went backwards under Nancy, and we're managing to regain a lot of where we lost under Nancy, under O'Neill second time. And what we can say is, Under O'Neill, Celtic seemed to have an ability to win games that they were losing before, or drawing games that they were losing before, and finding ways to win games despite the fact that they're statistically much poorer. We had one shot against Rangers on Sunday, none on target. They had, I think it was 24 shots, of which 6 or 8 were on target. In general terms, if you get outshot that much, you lose the game. The fact that Celtic found a way to win that game on Sunday was quite miraculous. And then a lot of that goes down to the players, and a lot of that goes down to O'Neill, Maloney, Fotheringham, etc. And it also probably goes down to this bunch of players, I think, are all rallying around each other. The team spirit in that Rangers game was so different from the team spirit we had at a similar stage of the Kairat Almaty game. The Kairat Almaty game, we looked flat going into extra time against them. We looked very, very flat going into penalty kicks. We lost to Kairat Almaty on penalties back in August, September. The spirit in those Celtic players when they won that penalty shootout against Rangers on Sunday was 100 times better under O'Neill and Maloney than it had been under Rodgers in that game in Kazakhstan where we got knocked out on penalties. So I think it's their man management has been so much better than the previous managers, and I think Wilfred Nancy's man management was also very poor. He didn't get the players to play for him. Remembering that Ange Postecoglou brought in a very, very different system when he took over 4 or 5 years ago, and very quickly got all the players buying into his system. Clearly, Wilfred Nancy couldn't get very many of his players to buy into his new system. And very, very clearly, Maloney and Fotheringham and O'Neill have very much got this bunch of players to play for each other and to play for themselves, for the club, and for the management team. Sorry, I got a wee bit behind with all the comments there. I'm sorry. Yeah, Gavi boy, I think you make a really good point there. I think in many ways, no matter what Celtic do, there are people who are going to be negative about things. One could be negative about the fact that we had so few shots and had to defend so much against Stuttgart, had to defend so much against Rangers last Sunday. But in the end, all that really matters in the game is the result at the end of the game. And we beat Stuttgart 1-0, despite the fact that we were defending so much. We actually didn't really have the best of the stats against Feyenoord Rotterdam, but we won that game 3-1. And one way or another, O'Neill and Maloney are finding ways to get this bunch of players to win games, and to this bunch of players to win games where they're being dominated or outpassed or outplayed by the opposition. Don't know about fairy tales, Chipper 67, but I think there's a good feeling around the club. I think there's a lot of confidence at the club. I think the confidence got battered in the end month or so of Brendan Rodgers. I think the confidence got battered under Wilfred Nancy. I think part of that also was, in both cases, there was a lot of negativity and toxicity at the end of the Rodgers era. There was a lot of toxicity throughout the whole of the Nancy era. So I think a lot of these things are chicken and an egg, that the poor success on the pitch leads to unhappiness off the pitch, which leads to poor, even worse performances. I think all these things are factors. And after all, the players are human beings, the managers are human beings. They've all got wives and kids and girlfriends and mums and dads and brothers and sisters and friends, etc. I think all of them do read the newspapers. They all hear the radio. They all hear Sky Sports. They all hear various different pundits on Talk Sport and Radio Clyde and all these other ones. Yes, I think that Martin O'Neill's way of managing, particularly away from home in Europe, is quite old fashioned. In that, in the good old days of European football, leg games were over 2 ties. You played the same team home and away, and then you got through. So quite often, the way you played away ties was to defend and hit on the break. And Celtic under Martin O'Neill had a lot of good results away from home, where we soaked up a lot of the pressure from other teams and we scored goals. I think in those days it obviously helps when you've got players like Hartson, Sutton, Larsson, Petrov, Moravcik, etc., to score the goals for you, and that you've got some real quality players who can turn the half chance into a real chance. I don't think Celtic's got anyone at the moment, anywhere near as good as any of those all-time greats that we just mentioned there. And also some of those players, Larsson, Moravcik in particular, had a real magic to them as well. Gordon Strachan had a surprisingly good record with a weaker squad than Martin O'Neill had in the season or two before that. Strachan still managed to get Celtic into a couple of last 16s. Again, we had a magic man in that team with Shunsuke Nakamura, one of my all-time favourite players. Celtic under O'Neill in his first spell found ways of winning games and beating better teams, beating Barcelona, etc. And to a lesser extent, that was also the case with Gordon Strachan. We beat Man United 1-0 at Celtic Park. We lost a close game at Old Trafford. We then got rather done out of the game away from home against AC Milan, a rather dodgy non-penalty against their captain very early in the game away from home. Could have made things really different. Well, I don't think on Sunday against Rangers we could have any real grumbles about the referee or VAR. There was a goal for Celtic that was disallowed because it was offside, and it was offside. I know a lot of people are not happy with the lines on the TV screen from VAR, but the freeze frame that was roughly shooting across the pitch did have Liam Scales offside. The Rangers' goal was disallowed for handball. It was handball. It was disallowed. Trusty elbowed the ball with his arm well into his side. That wasn't given as a penalty. So I think Celtic, there were a few fouls given for Rangers that Celtic didn't get. There were one or two inconsistencies in terms of yellow cards. However, to be fair, very early in the match against Rangers, within about 3 or 4 minutes, one of the Rangers players was yellow carded for a foul. So we've had the rough end of the stick with quite a few refereeing decisions over the course of the season. We've had a few going our way, and the game against Rangers at the weekend I don't think we could really grumble with any of the decisions that went for us or against us, except maybe some of the fouls the Rangers got, we didn't get for the same corresponding level of tackle or impact or whatever. But maybe Rangers could have got a couple more yellow cards, or maybe they don't. But coming back to Sunday's game, I think the referees and VAR pretty much got everything pretty much right. Certainly the key big decisions. But I will happily agree, or I will agree willingly, that early in the season we have had more decisions go against us than would be statistically the average. And Hearts and Rangers have had statistically more decisions go in their favour than should have been the case. No, the answer to that question is no, I didn't. So, not quite sure what it was. Maybe it was just me changing position on the chair. I can guarantee 100% with all honesty, no. So it must be a sound coming from me moving position on the chair. If we're talking about the League Cup semi-final, several decisions didn't go our way. The Rogston penalty probably shouldn't have been the penalty. Strong argument to say that the tackle on Kenny should have been a red card for that Rangers player as well. We were already down to 10 men from Asgard being sent off. So I think it swings and roundabouts. But I would agree that in the League Cup semi-final, a lot of the decisions in the 90 minutes went in Rangers' favour. If we think, however, back to the previous League Cup final, the one where Liam Scales pulled the Rangers player back on the edge of the box, it should have been given as a penalty and it wasn't. So, and quite often things tend to be swings and roundabouts, and quite often we tend to remember when it goes against us rather than remember the ones where we maybe got the benefit of the doubt or got a lucky decision in our favour. We think back to the St Mirren game early in the season. Liam Scales scored an own goal. That was disallowed for offside, and the player interfering with Scales as he scored the own goal. That decision could have gone either way. Things tend to balance out, but they haven't balanced out over this season. But maybe the last 11 games of the season, things will balance out and we'll get a few decisions go, a few 50-50s go in our favour rather than going against us. some very, very odd comments. Be a second. Sorry, problems with the comments box there. I wouldn't dream of blocking you slabbering cabbage. Most things that you say are amusing, and I can guarantee 100% I didn't break wind in any way. But if that's how it comes over through the live stream, I'm willing to accept that things are not always what they appear. But I wouldn't dream of blocking you. I've only actually ever blocked 2 people on this channel, one of whom made some horrible accusations, which were very, very hurtful. Having said that it's not on to do that, the person kept on making comments nearly as nasty and as horrible as those first 2 or 3 had been. And then somebody a couple of weeks ago was just being an absolute idiot, and being stupid and rude, and lots of swear words, etc. That I don't think is very constructive for the live stream. Yes, I think smell the glove. You make a good point. There's an awful lot of other things going on in the world that are a lot more. I know we all think that everything about Celtic and football and stuff is the biggest issue in the whole world, but there are quite a number of issues in the world that are even bigger than football. Sligo boy, as I can't apologize any more than I apologized on the day. Your comment and that other person's comments were side by side. The comment thing went down one slot by the time I was clicking the button. I accidentally, but you've been a very, very welcome, valued member of the live stream community for every single time since then. I was very, very happy that you were able to get yourself reinstated and up and running again. So I can only apologize again for accidentally putting you off. I wasn't counting you in the terms of the statistics of people that have excluded from the channel. Okay, fair enough, Gaffy boy. I think there are a lot of things going on, unfortunately, in the world. Admittedly, at the moment, it's all far, far away. But as someone was saying, all the issues in and around Iran and the Emirates and Kuwait and Oman and stuff has an impact on petrol prices and diesel prices and fuel prices. Could have an impact on house fuel, electricity, and gas prices and stuff as well in the future. So it's a wee bit scary, all these things. So Esbergen 7405. In terms of who's going to be next Celtic manager, it's something we chat about maybe an hour ago. A lot of the money is on Roberto Martinez. A lot of the money actually today swapped from Roberto Martinez to Robbie Keane. So over the course of today, Robbie Keane has moved from 4th or 5th favourite to being number 1 favourite. There are a couple of news sites and Celtic fan sites who are saying that Celtic have a 3-man shortlist for the job this summer. Craig Bellamy, the Welsh manager, Robbie Keane, the Ferencváros manager, and Jens Bertel Askew, the Motherwell manager. The other person that a lot of people are putting forward is Roberto Martinez, the current Portugal manager. Yep, Tone 70. I think Knutsen would have been a good manager for Celtic. I think he would actually have probably brought in a very good structure at Celtic behind the scenes. He's very good at coaching, very good at scouting and recruitment, very good at recruiting and developing young players, particularly players who are native to that area. So Scandinavian players, primarily Norwegian players. Wasn't known for bringing in players from other countries, particularly outside of that sort of region, and turning them into superstars. A couple of his ex-players, Mvuka and Czernetki, both of them went through Bodo Glimt. Mvuka had a good short career at Bodo Glimt, very disappointing career at Lorient. So at the moment, so up until the last day or so, Roberto Martinez was the favourite. It would appear, as of today, that Robbie Keane has moved up to being the number 1 favourite. Interesting one, actually. You make a good point, Smell the Glove. I don't know whether Tottenham Hotspur would consider that Robbie Keane had enough success to get the Spurs job. I think in terms of where Celtic is in the world nowadays, that he probably has had enough success to get Robbie Keane to get the Celtic job. I suspect that probably Spurs will be looking for an even bigger name. Robbie Keane, of course, an ex-Spurs player, so I don't know. So I think at one point Kjetil Knutsen was in line to be Celtic's manager. Whether he did or didn't lose out to Wilfred Nancy, I don't know. Certainly, the stories are that Knutsen wasn't going to come to Celtic in November, December of 2025. He might have come to Celtic in January 2026 once Bodo Glimt were knocked out of Europe, and it turned out they didn't get knocked out of Europe in January. They carried on. They won their knockout stage. They're on course to win their last 16 game. 3-0 lead going into the second away leg. And he had said that he was going to be Bodo Glimt manager at least until the end of this Bodo Glimt European season. Their league season, of course, is ended. It will be restarting fairly soon in Norwegian football because they do a spring, summer, autumn league, whilst we do a summer, autumn, winter, spring league. So they take the winter months off, except this year the Bodo Glimt are playing non-stop for 12 months. Which might have a knock-on effect for them next season, in that their players won't have had a proper end of season break between their last Norwegian season and their next Norwegian season. Yes. So Robbie Keane, I think Robbie Keane does tick a lot of boxes in terms of being a Celtic manager. Lifelong interest in Celtic as a football club, lifelong Celtic supporter, played for Celtic for 4 or 5 months, has had success in different leagues, plays attacking football, and this season has taken Ferencváros further and further in Europe. He's achieved quite a number of things that Celtic would want in terms of their manager. He's a young manager as well, different ideas, which I think also is useful. And assuming that if the stories are true, that he's going to carry on being the Ferencváros manager to the end of their season, that would then mean he's free as of May, June time, which means he's free to come in and be Celtic's manager right at the start of the pre-season. Not that at the start of the pre-season Celtic will have all their players back, because quite a number will be finishing off playing in the World Cup. Some will be having a bit of a post-World Cup holiday. Not that probably terribly many of Celtic's squad will be playing for teams going deep into the World Cup, but certainly plenty of our players will be playing the first couple of weeks or so of the World Cup, assuming that there is still going to be a World Cup in America this summer, which also might all get cancelled at the last minute. Pat McLaughlin, you make a really super point. Bodo Glimt do have an incredibly good home record. They won 3-0, obviously, against Sporting Lisbon last night. They beat they won their home leg last time around in the knockout stage. I think they actually won or drew their away game. They beat Man City at the Bodo Glimt ground. Bodo Glimt is itself is the Bodo. The city is actually a very small place, about 10,000, 12,000 is a stadium. The population is the equivalent of a small Scottish town. So it's one of the reasons a lot of folk that feel that Knutsen would have been very open to coming to Celtic. Fair enough. I don't honestly see any possibility of Martin O'Neill staying on as Celtic's manager for past the end of this season. He's now 74 years old. I think the fact that he's still doing the odd phone-in session with Talk Sport, I think probably he's quite keen to get back to being a media pundit, rather than having the constant pressure of travelling all over Scotland and all over Europe and doing press conferences right, left and centre. I think he is slightly struggling with modern day football management as well. A lot more, I think, in some ways, the media pressure is a lot higher now than it was 25 years ago. Obviously, 25 years ago, there weren't David 67 channels or Celtic AM or ACSOM, etc. In those days, it was the BBC, the STV, Sky Sports, and the print journalists. Nowadays, there's a lot more scrutiny, a lot more media work that he has to do, a lot more interviews he has to do. So I do think he's actually struggling with the intensity and the pace of being a first-team head coach manager. So I don't see him staying on past the end of the season. The fact he's done so well in combination with the assistant manager and the coaches, I think that's really been very, very admirable. Yep. Certainly, my understanding of the weather in countries like Norway, etc., is over the winter it would be incredibly difficult to play football on a regular basis and have games always reliably being able to be played. And as people have been saying, Bodø Glimt have got a very, very good home record. They've beaten some of Europe's best teams up there, and surprisingly have kept on doing so throughout this Champions League. I think there's a perfectly good argument for it. I wouldn't be against it. I think again, it's something that Celtic could do far better, is honour their ex players, their ex managers. I think they could have a far better sort of Celtic history museum type of thing. I think there's a lot of areas around the current Celtic Park that they could exploit, or they could expand or exploit, depending on what your word is. And honour players, honour managers, a lot more about Celtic's history, etc. So I would not be in the least bit against Martin Neal being given a statue at the end of his time as Celtic's manager, which presumably will be after the cup final, hopefully, with Carl McGregor or whomever raising the trophy to give us the double. I think 270. That's also whoever takes over as Celtic's manager in June, July will have an awful lot of difficult decisions to make very early. If we're predicting who's going to be going, I think Dyson Maeda is on his way out. I think Rio Atati is on his way out. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Yang doesn't go. Reportedly, there are a lot of people who are keen to sign Benjamin Nygren. He's apparently attracting a lot of attention from the medium level English Premier League sides and similar teams in other big teams elsewhere, big leagues elsewhere in Europe. I think Kasper Schmeichel will be retiring. I think Kieran Tierney's at Celtic to the end of his career. I think Carl McGregor's at the end is going to be at Celtic to the end of his career. I think probably next season, Carl McGregor's probably I would have thought next season going to be playing less and less football, because for me his fitness and his form this season hasn't been as good as it should have been. I think he's been playing far too much this season, and he's been playing this season not fully fit. I think James Forrest, this might well be James Forrest last season at Celtic. Can't certainly see him being at Celtic more than one season after this. I think Arnie Engels will be off in the summer as well. Notts Forest put in, £25 million bid for him. My suspicion is that the Engels will be going this summer. So whoever comes in will have a lot of players leaving, a lot of players coming in. Of course, also we'll have quite a number of players who are currently with us on loan and currently with us on freedom of free agents. I would be surprised if Kelechi Iheanacho is still at Celtic next season. I wouldn't be too surprised if Oxlade-Chamberlain was still at Celtic next season. I could see him, once he settles down into Scottish football, I could see him finishing his last 2 or 3 years as a professional at Celtic. As I said, I think McGregor and Tierney will carry on for Celtic. But whether players like Arojo, Chavanchara, Sirachi stay at Celtic past their loan spells finishing, I don't know. Sirachi has reportedly had negotiations. There are some stories suggesting that Arojo's had some negotiations with Celtic to make their contract permanent. Be interesting also to see whether Celtic make any effort to sign Benjamin Arthur on permanently. I've been very, very impressed with him. He's only, 2021? I think he's got the best years ahead of him. And I personally have been very, very impressed with Austin Trusty this season. I think he's for the most part got better and better. He's had the odd bad moment, bad game, but then so does everybody. And I thought he was a real difference maker in the game on Sunday. For me, he was Celtic's best player on Sunday, closely followed by Sinisalo. Yes, Tone 70. I think Arojo has very, very, very much bought into Celtic. I think he's got a tremendous personality for Celtic. I think he's got that wee bit of the sort of the rogue nature to him, a bit like Scott Brown, a bit like Alistair Johnston. He's got the ability to rile up and annoy opposition players and opposition fans. You could just see Arojo doing something similar to Alfredo Morelos that Scott Brown always did to Alfredo Morelos, or Scott Brown did to Ryan Kent, the Rangers player, just really getting on their nerves and annoying them. So I think Arojo's probably, of the two, Arojo's probably the more likely one to stay at Celtic between him and Sirachi. There appears to be a fair amount of interest in Sirachi from other South American teams and from a few English teams and Spanish teams. I could see him much more likely going to them rather than staying at Celtic. Of course, at Celtic, he's probably going to be considered the number two, the backup to Kieran Tierney. As I was saying a wee bit of a while ago, Kieran Tierney, in terms of his attacking output, has had his best ever season for Celtic. In his whole Celtic career prior to going to Arsenal, he's scored as many goals as he has scored for Celtic this season. So he's had a great season for Celtic scoring goals. His 7 assists this season are the best he's ever had at Celtic, or equals his best ever record at Celtic. So in terms of his attacking midfield work and attacking work, Tierney's had a brilliant season for Celtic. And I think his defending's been pretty decent too. So Arojo is currently a Bournemouth player. It doesn't look like Bournemouth have any intention of moving him from being the second or third choice right back at Bournemouth. So I do think probably Arojo will be moving on this summer one way or another. Quite a lot of talk that Celtic have been exploring with him, his agent, and with Bournemouth about making this a permanent thing. So, as I say, if I was going to bet on it, which I don't do, I know Pat McLaughlin, a couple of other people, very, very good at sports betting. If I was going to put a bet on who of our loan players and free agents will still be with us, still with Celtic next season, Arojo, I think, is a good chance, although not certain. I think Chavan Char is a good chance, although not certain. I think Oxlade-Chamberlain's a good chance, although not certain. I would be surprised if Sirachi stays. I'd be very surprised if Iheanacho stays for a second season. Benjamin Arthur is an interesting one. I could easily see Celtic getting Arthur back on a season-long loan for next season. I think he's enjoying playing for Celtic. I think he's enjoying playing first-team football. As I say, I'm impressed with his aerial ability. He's a good defender. He's got quite a lot of pace as well for a tall man. And I think he's a player who's going to get better and better and better. Whether he gets better and better and better as a Celtic player is another matter, but I wouldn't be too surprised if Brentford didn't send Benjamin Arthur back to Celtic for a full season-long loan next season. I think Bournemouth would be willing to take a small loss on Arojo, given the fact that Alistair Johnston's fitness isn't 100%. Having him and Johnston would be, I think, very easy to fit that into Celtic's framework. We then could have Colby Donovan as our Scottish qualified backup player, then maybe move Anthony Ralston on. I think one of the reasons that Anthony Ralston had carried on being part of Celtic's squad is the fact that he's Scottish and he's Celtic trained, both of which are very important for the UEFA coefficients for Champions League and Europa League, etc. So I could easily see Colby Donovan moving forward into being that role that Anthony Ralston currently does. Also, the fact that Arojo could easily play right-sided midfield. He could even, at a push, play as a right winger, and that he actually does have decent ability to cross and pass. He's got lots of pace. He's got tons and tons of energy. And you could also certainly, even if you wanted, use Arojo as a more conventional right wing back. You could use Alistair Johnston actually, if you wanted, as a right-sided centre back. If you did want to go to a traditional 3-5-2 with wing backs. If that's what the new manager wanted to do, there might be more of a reason for keeping Sirachi to back up Kieran Tierney at left back. I agree with an awful lot of what you're saying there. I think he's a tremendous trier. I think he plays his heart out for Celtic. I think he does lack a bit of pace. He lacks a bit of recovery pace, which means he can quite often get caught out on the wrong side of players. He's not quite, for me, as strong as he should be to stand up to big, tall, strong centre forwards. He definitely is a good defender when everything's in front of him. One of the problems that Celtic have is quite often there's space behind him and he doesn't have the pace to catch up really fast wide players or really fast strikers. And quite often, as I say, gets himself out of position and doesn't have the pace to recover the way that Austin Trusty does or Cameron Carter-Vickers does. That's a pretty reasonable point of view as well. The only snag with loaning out Colby Donovan for a season, let's say, to play for Aberdeen or St Mirren or Hibs or whatever, it makes an awful lot of sense that he would be starting every single game. Make a lot of sense. My only real worry with that would be the fact that we would struggle then to have enough Celtic-trained and Scotland-trained players to meet the 4+4 quota that UEFA has for Champions League and for Europa League squads. I think Donovan, it would be a very, very. I think Donovan could be, if he keeps on progressing the way that he has this season, could turn into a very, very good Celtic player in the longer term. Bit of speculation that Alistair Johnston might be away from Celtic next season. I think the fact that he's been a bit injury prone and missed a lot of games probably has scuppered a lot of the positivity that there was in terms of his. However, if he had a really good World Cup for Canada, if Arojo had a really good World Cup for Mexico, I think both of them would move high up on lots of other teams' shopping lists. So it'd be great if Celtic could get in early to convince Oroho to come back to Celtic for another 2 or 3 seasons. Yes, Donovan's got a great attitude, works hard. He's tall, he's strong, he's got pace to play out wide. He is relatively tall for a right back. He's got that bit more aerial ability and strength in the box for defending. I think there's an awful lot of positives to Colby Donovan. I think he needs just a bit more experience, whether that experience is best with a season-long loan away at Aberdeen or St Mirren or Kilmarnock or whatever, or whether it's best to get that experience playing as the backup to Alistair Johnston or the backup to Johnson and Oroho. I don't know. I've got a feeling with the way that Alistair Johnston's fitness is that if he was backing up Johnson and Oroho at right back, that he'd get a lot of games, the same way that Anthony Ralston has had a lot of games for Celtic as basically the third choice right back at Celtic for many, many years. Well, Gabby boy, I understand where you're coming from. I think personally, with the quality of players that Celtic had, no matter who the manager was, I think Celtic would still have been challenging for the title. Where I think O'Neill and his coaching team have been especially good is the fact that they came in and changed Celtic around after the Rodgers debacle and things really going down the toilet under Rodgers in terms of fan happiness, player happiness, happiness of the board and the executives, the manager himself, but happiness. I think O'Neill did a tremendous job turning things around, coming in to replace Rodgers, and he did exactly the same under similar circumstances, coming in to replace Nancy in January. Again, coming into an extremely unhappy dressing room, extremely unhappy fan base, very, very unhappy, dissatisfied, disgruntled players. So I think both coming in to replace Rodgers and coming in to replace Nancy, the team the players weren't happy, the fans weren't happy, there was unhappiness behind the scenes, and the results on the pitch weren't good enough. Now, I've got a personal feeling, had Celtic persisted with Brendan Rodgers, that things would have turned around under Rodgers. Celtic had dodgy spells 2 or 3 times before under Rodgers, and he'd found a way to turn things around. I think Celtic probably, had they carried on with Wilfred Nancy, might have turned things around. I think it's less likely under Nancy, simply because the fixtures were just so intensive from mid-November through to the game against Rangers last Sunday of basically 2 games a week every week for the last 4 months. So 3 months, 4 months, whatever. From mid-November right through to mid-March. That's 4 months, isn't it? Yes. However, I think Celtic personally would have been challenging for the title, top 2 or 3, no matter who the manager was this season. The fact we've had 3 different managers, or 4 different managers if you count O'Neill being in twice, I think it's quite remarkable that we're still in challenging for 2 trophies at the end of this season, with all the injuries that we've had, and with all the unhappiness and turmoil off the scenes and behind the scenes, and all the fan dissatisfaction, and the fact that a lot of the players have not been happy this season as well. I think one of the things Wyoming's CSC is that up until this season, beating Rangers on a consistent basis was enough to win generally the league, the cup, and the other cup. in that nobody else in Scotland could, on a consistent basis, challenge Celtic. Rangers pretty much have been the only team for a long time in Scottish football who've been genuinely able to challenge Celtic and beat Celtic enough. After all, Rangers are the only team that's won the league in the last 14 years apart from Celtic, and none of the other teams really ever got themselves into a challenge to win terribly many trophies over those years. So up until this season, beating Rangers was enough to win in Scotland, because Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, Dundee United, Kilmarnock, Motherwell, none of them had consistently been able to win throughout a whole season. A lot of them had a good start. Aberdeen had a great start to the season last year, then it all fell away. And I think there was a feeling that Hearts would be much the same this season. And I think part of that is down to the fact that both Celtic and Rangers this season have had a lot of turmoil off the pitch, a rather unsettled management structure, and an unhappy players and stuff as well. Well, I would agree with what you're saying up to, but I don't see Adamu at the club next season. I don't see Mvuka at the club next season. I would not be too surprised to see Chavanchara at the club next season. I personally think there's something about Chavanchara that we haven't quite seen so far. That I think he has got a lot of ability, a lot of talent. And I don't think Martin O'Neill has used Chavanchara at his best, nor has Celtic's midfield or wide players given him the chance to get chances to score. I think personally, it's just my personal opinion, had Chavanchara been our centre forward instead of Johnny Kenny in the games that Johnny Kenny was the centre forward in the Rodgers, O'Neill, Nancy months, that he would have put away a lot of the chances that Kenny and Maeda were getting. That's just an opinion. Good night to you, Smell the Glove. Thank you very much for all your wonderful contributions. It's been great to have you on. Planning to do another live stream next Thursday, so hopefully you're free then as well. Gavy boy, I fully respect your opinions. I love your opinions in the comment section are great. A lot of the comments on the live stream are great. I think personally, my personal opinion is that Celtic would no matter who Celtic's manager was, that we would be pretty much in the position that we are at the moment, whether we'd carried on with Rodgers, whether we'd carried on with O'Neill and not gone to Nancy. I do think Celtic would have turned things around had we persisted with Wilfred Nancy longer, but that's just a matter of opinion. I think O'Neill has done a tremendous job, and as I say, I think O'Neill and Maloney and stuff have done a tremendous job given how unhappy everybody was within the club, on the pitch and off the pitch, and within the supporters when Rodgers left and when Nancy left. I think they've done a tremendous job turning Celtic around both those times. However, I do think had Celtic persisted with Rodgers, we probably would be in this position, challenging for the cup in the league, but in and around behind Hearts. And I think that also would have been the case under Nancy, that Celtic's form would be rather inconsistent under those other managers. Fair enough. One of the problems that Chavanchara has is I don't think the Borussia Mönchengladbach management team or playing team would have him back. He kind of fell out with the Borussia Mönchengladbach coaching staff, and he very much fell out with the people behind the scenes at Borussia Mönchengladbach, because he wasn't getting paid by Borussia Mönchengladbach when he was being loaned to the team in Turkey, nor was the team in Turkey paying him what they were supposed to be paying him whilst he was on loan to them. And so when he came back, so he was having a lot of problems when he was on loan in Turkey, because he wasn't getting paid properly by his parent club, Borussia Mönchengladbach, nor was he getting paid properly by his loan club. And I think he created quite a lot of unsettlement when he went back to Borussia Mönchengladbach after his loan spell in Turkey finished. So I'm not sure that the players, the coaches, or the management, the behind-the-scenes management at Borussia Mönchengladbach would have him back. And I do think he a bit like Arojo, has embraced the Celtic culture better than all the others. So I think Arojo is very much bought into Celtic. I think Xherdan Shaqiri is very much bought into Celtic. So just a feeling. And I do think if Xherdan Shaqiri was used better by O'Neill or by the new manager, that things would improve in time. But I don't really see with Mvuka or Adamu the quality of players that we require. I think Iheanacho, if he was fit, would be a useful player for Celtic, but I don't think we've actually seen Iheanacho fit for Celtic, apart from, rather ironically, I think the best that Iheanacho has looked for Celtic actually was that 30 minutes or so playing for Celtic in the League Cup final against St Mirren. He looked like he had quite a bit of pace, quite a bit of strength. It looked like he'd recaptured his positional sense about getting in the right place at the right time. He had a couple of half chances in that game against St Mirren, and then unfortunately pulled his hamstring yet again, and he just has not looked fit ever since then. He had a long spell out, and since he came back about 6 weeks ago, he just hasn't been fit. Which I think is why he's been in and out the squad. I just don't think he's actually got himself properly fit. If we're talking about the players, then an awful lot of Celtic's current players have won lots and lots of titles and leagues and cups and stuff for Celtic. I think just like any team, I think teams always need to be refreshed, and there always needs to be turnover of players coming and going. And I do think there always has to be a few players who are consistently within the squad year after year after year. And I do think Celtic just haven't had this season. They haven't had a good turnover of players. I think there's a few players like Maeda, like Hatate, who maybe are just a bit stale. I think both those players, I think, expected they would be playing for another team this season. So I think there's a bit of unhappiness with both those players. However, a lot of these players have delivered for Celtic in the past. So many of these players are the ones that changed things around in the second half of Ange Postecoglou's first season. A lot of these players are the ones who helped Celtic win 14 games out the last 15 in Rodgers' season 23-24. So I think actually a lot of these players have delivered for Celtic before. I think a few of the players are not at their best. Maeda, Hatate. I think a few players are maybe at the end of their career. McGregor, Forrest, Schmeichel, etc. I think I think Mvuka looked really spooked in front of that crowd. I don't think he'd ever probably played a game in a crowd that was so partisan, so hostile. I think he got spooked by the atmosphere, spooked by the crowd. I thought he tried hard. He helped out Scales keeping Sterling, etc., pushed further back. He helped keep Tavernier back a bit more in his own half than Tavernier often does do. And in terms of an attacking threat, Mvuka didn't really give Celtic anything down that left-hand side. Although, to be fair to him, he did manage to hold the ball up in the 119th minute. He nearly got James Forrest in behind to cross into the box. I'm not convinced that. I think Mvuka's confidence is low, and I think he got spooked by the Celtic Rangers crowd at Ibrox. I don't think he'd ever played in a game in that kind of circumstance, that kind of noise, that kind of hostility, and I think he got spooked, which is why I was very surprised that he was given the last 20 minutes of normal time rather than leaving Maeda on into extra time. I would personally have not taken Maeda off on last Sunday, partly because Maeda's got the pace in the 119th minute to run the length of the pitch, basically, to score a goal for you. And Maeda obviously is very used to the atmosphere of Celtic and Rangers. Yes, if we're debating the power structure at Celtic, Desmond has something in the region of 35%. He's got a voting bloc that gives him on every single issue 50% plus. So Desmond and his allies within the shareholders basically can't lose any votes, because they always are going to get 52% or more. Now, I think you probably are about right in terms of how much Dermot Desmond's shares would be worth if you base it on the current share price, etc. Except if you're selling your shares, you wouldn't sell it for what the share price is. You always would be selling it for a lot more than what the share price is actually currently worth. So it would some business people are suggesting that it would take somewhere in the region of 200 to 250 million to buy Dermot Desmond out of his Celtic shareholding, because, as I say, if you're buying shares to take over a company, take over a company if it's a business, or take over a football club, you always have to pay way over the odds to buy those shares. That was one of the things actually about Fergus McCann when he sold his shares in the sort of late 90s to Dermot Desmond primarily, was he didn't actually ask for very much in the way of a profit. He didn't actually force Desmond into spending quite as much as he would have done. So I think if anybody was to buy Dermot Desmond out of his shares, they would need to pay probably twice as much as what the shares are currently worth. Because it's not just the share. When you buy the shares, you buy the club. You'd be buying control of the club as well, and you've got all the other assets that Celtic have got: the players, the stadiums, the training fields, Barrowfield, Lennoxtown. You've got all the land that Celtic owns around Celtic Park. You've got all the merchandising. You've got the shops. You've got all the online business. You've got all the other bits and bobs that are part of Celtic. So it would, supposedly, people say, take about £250 million to buy Celtic, to buy Dermot Desmond out. Yes, so the estimates are somewhere in that region, at least 350, possibly £500 million. And to answer your question at the point, Celtic, in terms of, if we're talking simply in terms of a business, Celtic are not depreciating under Dermot Desmond. In terms of a club, if we're talking simply, if you're calling Celtic a business, in terms of stocks and shares and assets and all these things, Celtic are actually are doing a fine job in terms of all those things. Yeah, so if anybody actually watches the stock market, Celtic's share price is actually on the up. It's higher now than it was 6 months ago, and they're actually their share price is higher now than it was a year ago. So Celtic actually is, and if we're talking business terms, is better now than it was 12 months ago. Now that might take a bit of a dip with not being the Champions League. Not if we don't win the league this year, with us not qualifying for the Champions League last year. Obviously, Celtic are going to have bigger losses this year, for a variety of reasons than we did in previous seasons. We're also got a much bigger wage budget this season and next season than we ever have had before. But in terms of a value for Celtic as a football club and as a business to invest in, Celtic's actually better now than they were 12 months ago, or 24 months ago, or 3 years, 5 years, 10 years ago. So it's Celtic actually is better now under Dermot Desmond, simply if we're calling it a business. And also Celtic's assets are much better now than they were 5 years, 10 years ago, in that we've now got reportedly a very good stadium facilities at Lennoxtown and very good facilities at Barrowfield. I've never been to either of the two of them, so I can't say for a certainty. But anyway. Anyway, we've been going for nearly 3.5 hours, so just want to have a wee think about the next game against Motherwell. Are there any particular changes you would do to the way that Celtic have been playing in the last few weeks against Aberdeen, Stuttgart, the two Rangers games? Any particular things you would want Maloney and O'Neill to do in terms of the Motherwell match? Are there any particular things you think Celtic can do to try and combat the way that Motherwell play? I would guess that Celtic will have to make a few changes from their usual first choice starting 11. Obviously, Austin Trusty's going to miss this game against Motherwell on Saturday. Does look like McGregor's out for a few weeks. Last time he had this injury, he was out for 3-4 weeks. The time before, he was out for 4 or 5 weeks. So I don't see him back. Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Yep. Yes, one of the things, of course, with Motherwell on Sunday is one of the key factors in most of their games this season has been the fact that Stephen Welsh has been a very good centre back for them. Obviously, both the game where we beat them 3-2 and the game where they beat us 2-0, he wasn't playing in either of those games because of the loan agreements. However, he has actually been a very important player in terms of leading their defence. So I think also possibly losing him for the game might be a factor in Celtic's favour. I think also Celtic have a better feeling of how Motherwell play now than we did, particularly in the game where we won 3-2. I think the rather miserable 2-0 defeat that we had under Nancy against Motherwell was a wee bit of an exception to the rule. I think Motherwell played especially well that night. I think Celtic played especially poorly that night. However, we did actually miss quite a number of chances. We also gave away a really stupid second goal to Motherwell that night by messing about in defence, trying short passes. When short passes weren't on, quite why Scales or Schmeichel just didn't punt the ball up the other end and get the ball out the danger area, rather than they tried intricate passes and gave away a goal to Motherwell, very much like the goal that Nygren had scored for us in the 3-2 match. Yep. I'm equally confident as yourself, Eddie C, and Sligo boy. In terms of a score, I'm kind of in two minds. I've always had this feeling for the last several weeks that Celtic are just suddenly going to click into form, click into playing well. Yeah, well, yes, that you do actually make a good point. And actually, Martin O'Neill had done a great job of hiding the fact that McGregor wasn't fit, and actually McGregor was taking part in training on the Friday and the Saturday after the Aberdeen game on the Wednesday. So up until the morning of on Sunday, no one seemed to think that McGregor was a doubt for the game in the afternoon. And you're quite right, actually, in a lot of ways, one of the ways that Rangers have been beating Celtic or drawing with Celtic over the last couple of seasons is they're very much focused on stopping Callum McGregor playing, and particularly under O'Neill and under Rodgers, McGregor's role is very, very pivotal to Celtic's success and the way that Celtic play. So you do make a good point. I actually hadn't really thought of that until now. That a lot of Rangers' setup was to try and stop McGregor. McGregor wasn't playing. Hatate, McCowan, I didn't think did the role at all well in the first half. I thought Hatate actually played more of the McGregor role in the second half and throughout extra time. And I thought he actually did a really pretty decent job in that McGregor role. I don't think I personally wasn't my feeling that Motherwell played us off the pitch in that game where we won 3-2. My memory of the game was it was a pretty much a 50-50 game. Celtic were on top for a lot of the game. We scored a goal through an actual penalty. We were on top. Motherwell then got a bit of a defensive mistake by Celtic. We gave away a penalty. Now, admittedly, Motherwell did give away our second goal, and then for the last, after the Nygren goal, Celtic were the only team that looked like they were going to win that game. But Motherwell have been really great. I don't think they played us off the park in the Celtic Park game. They played us off the park in the Motherwell game, although, as I said, we did have 3 or 4 chances to score, and we did give away a stupid second goal by messing about with short passes with Schmeichel and Scales and so on. But anyway, I think Celtic will play far better on Saturday than they did the last time we played against Motherwell. And I think we will actually have more answers of how to take away some of Motherwell's best players. I think we will be able to control Maswanese better than we did in previous games. But the proof is in the pudding on Saturday at 3 o'clock. Sadly, the game's not on live TV in Scotland, UK, Ireland, etc. So there'll be a bit of a difficult game to follow, other than through the radio. Yes, I think Motherwell, like any team who has had such a good season, I think in time, fatigue, injuries, suspensions, all mounts up. I think also teams work out better how to counter that the way that Asku's got the team playing. I think that's similar but to a lesser degree with Hearts. I think McInnes, being such an experienced manager, has managed to chop and change things and make a few changes and a few adaptations to his tactics, etc. I think actually McInnes, in the first game against Celtic and the second game against Celtic, and to a lesser degree the third game against Celtic this season, has actually done better than our manager has at changing things around to get themselves back on top. In that we were 1-1 with Hearts in the Rodgers match. We ended up losing that 3-1. Hearts came out and made a few changes at the start of the second half and very much changed the game. I think Hearts also adapted in the middle section of the Hearts Celtic game under Wilfred Nancy, and put us in the back foot. Thank you for your advice, and you may well be right. Just with the way that my IT often is, I don't want to mess about with things when they're working adequately. But I'm all for changing things in the future. But if people have been on the live streams before, there's been fairly regular that everything kind of collapses and crashes and freezes and stuff. So I don't want to disrupt things when they're working pretty well. So thank you for the advice. And as I said, if my IT and live stream facilities were more reliable, I'd be all for changing things around. But we've had a 3.5 hour live stream and it's not frozen so far. So anyway. So just one other wee thing I think it's worthwhile having a chat about before we finish things off for this live stream is that obviously with Austin Trusty being out of the game on Saturday against Motherwell, Celtic will have to change their centre back pairing. don't think Liam Scales will carry on at left back. So I think if Tierney's not fit, they'll play Sirachi from the start. Yep. So it does mean that almost certainly Liam Scales will go back to left centre back, which I think is fine in terms of the game against Motherwell. Does mean there's going to be a gap at right centre back, which Austin Trusty has played for most of the season after Carter Vickers getting injured. So the question is whether Celtic should go with Dane Murray as our right centre back or go with Benjamin Arthur for our right centre back. So I'd be interested to see what other people think in terms of whether we should go for Murray or Arthur as the partner for Liam Scales. I'd be very surprised if O'Neill keeps Scales at left back, assuming that Tierney is not fit. So I'd be very surprised if Tierney's not fit that Scales stays at left centre back, and which would then almost certainly mean we're playing Arthur and Murray as our two centre backs. I think that might be a wee bit too risky. Yep. So that's in essence is the question: should it be Benji Arthur or Dane Murray? My personal feeling is, as much as I think I'd like to see Dane Murray's career take off, I think Benjamin Arthur is the better player. I think he's got more height, more speed. I think he's still learning how to play the position at the higher level. So I personally would go for Benjamin Arthur. One of the issues that Arthur's had is he's obviously not played an awful lot of first-team games for Brentford. I think he'd played 3 or 4 cup matches for Brentford this season. Hadn't played an English Premier League game for Brentford all season. So I think possibly that was part of the reason that he got taken off after 60 minutes against Rangers last Sunday. I think otherwise he would have played the full 90 minutes or the full 120. Of course, he played 90 minutes plus in the Aberdeen match a few days before. So I think simply it was just saving Benjamin Arthur because he had played a lot more football than he usually does in a quick couple of games. Yes. Oops. I think it's a combination. I think Viljami Sinisalo for me looks so much more confidence building in goal than Kasper Schmeichel. Much better command of his box, much better command of his 6-yard box. He comes for crosses, he comes for high balls over the top. He's much more decisive than Kasper Schmeichel. Thinking back to the Motherwell 2-0 defeat around about Christmas time, there was a similar high long ball into the box that I'm sure Kasper Schmeichel would have come. That Kasper Schmeichel didn't come for. That ended up with Motherwell scoring the first goal that day. I'm very certain with that ball having taken such a long time to get into the box that Sinisalo would have taken command and come out to get it. Similar to in the League Cup final, the first goal and the second goal, I'm pretty sure that Sinisalo would have taken far better control of his box. Also, I think if Benjamin Arthur had been in the centre back in either situation, he also would have done a far better job defending the corner kick and then the free kick into the box that got St Mirren their first and second goals that day. Yes, I think if O'Neill goes for Arthur, I'd be happy. If he goes for Dane Murray, I'd be happy as well. I think Arojo has good experience. I think he's a bit of a leader. I think Sirachi on the other side, same sort of player. I think Liam Scales obviously has a lot of experience. Don't think he's as vocal a player as Austin Trusty, which is a slight problem. But I do agree. I think Sinisalo behind them doesn't allow Murray and Arthur a lot more confidence and a lot more support than they did do under with Kasper Schmeichel as the goalkeeper. I've got a funny feeling personally that Oxlade-Chamberlain will start on Saturday against Motherwell, although I do agree with Sligo Boy, is I'm not convinced at this point that Oxlade-Chamberlain is able to play a full 90 minutes for Celtic. I think probably Oxlade-Chamberlain's best position for Celtic is coming off the bench for the last half hour or so. Martin O'Neill seems to, by like clockwork, always make a couple of substitutions around about the 60-minute mark. So I do think actually Oxlade-Chamberlain's best position for Celtic is that a sub for the last half hour coming on to replace whoever has been the starter. I've got a feeling if we start with McCowan in the other role alongside Hatate on Saturday, that we might lose control of the midfield like we did at a lot of points against Rangers last Sunday. So I do wonder whether Celtic might start with Oxlade-Chamberlain to try and get a bit of control in midfield alongside Hatate, and then leave Oxlade-Chamberlain on for 60 minutes and then bring on McCowan or Bernardo. I think in an ideal world, if we had McGregor and Engels and Hatate to play those roles, it'd be a different matter, but obviously McGregor's out almost certainly, and Engels is definitely out for another 2 or 3 weeks. So I think possibly that's a reason that they might start Oxlade-Chamberlain and try and get as much time out of him as possible. But I do think at this point, with Oxlade-Chamberlain having had 9 months out of football, having finished off in Turkish football, that I think his endurance for playing top level football is just struggling a bit, as was shown the previous Sunday against Rangers in the league, where Oxlade-Chamberlain was completely useless for the first half and then got subbed off in the second half. Yes, I would agree. I would give James Forrest another year. His contract is up at the end of the season. I think he probably has done enough this season to merit another season. But you're entirely right. He is a player who can give us 20, 30 minutes at the end of the 90. And because he does actually have that ability still to deliver a good cross or a good pass, he's probably worthwhile throwing on late in the game. Obviously, his cross set up the Negrin goal against Aberdeen. His cross set up the penalty in the league match against Rangers. So I would give James Forrest another year. You're entirely right. The problem the Celtics got is they need someone to be kind of the ball carrier, lots of energy, lots of running in midfield. Engels does that role. I think Engels doing that role has mitigated and lessened the impact of McGregor not having the legs and the endurance and the fitness to play the full 90 minutes. I know that McGregor has been playing pretty much every game for the full 90 minutes all season, but I don't think his performances have been of the level that we have learned to, or we've expected from McGregor over a brilliant career at Celtic. I think he's one of the players who's kind of been 2 or 3 levels below where he usually would have been. Much like Maeda, much like Hatate, much like Schmeichel. And it's a bit of part of the reason that Celtic have struggled all season is several of their best experienced players have been playing 2 or 3 levels below their best. And I do think part of the reason that we were partly getting away with it with Engels beside McGregor was Engels did a lot of the running, a lot of the leg work and the ball carrying and the water carrying, etc. in midfield, which is something McCowan can't really do. Oxlade-Chamberlain doesn't really do, Hatate doesn't really do. To be fair, I thought Hatate did a good job dropping back into the deeper role after McCowan got taken off. But I don't think that's Hatate's best position, although it may be for the next couple of matches he does play in that deeper, more of a McGregor role. Yes, that's a very good way of summarising it. I think he's got the fitness, the ability to change a game, but I don't think he's got the fitness to play and change games for the full 90 minutes. And to be fair, again, late in the game, Oxlade-Chamberlain on Sunday against Rangers did have a nice pass out of midfield. It got released up to Mumbuka up deep in the Rangers zone. He then laid it off to James Forrest, who crossed into the box, but we just didn't have enough players in the box to. I don't know. I think you're entirely right in terms of Kasper Schmeichel's form this season and the fact that Sinisalo has been, since he got given the goalkeeper's jersey 4 or 5 games ago, and I think he's been way better than Schmeichel. I just got this funny feeling that from the way that you hear Martin O'Neill talking about Kasper Schmeichel, that he's keen to get Schmeichel back into the team. I think personally it would be the wrong move. And I would also say that it appears in the last game or two, I think O'Neill's realising just how good Sinisalo is and how different he is actually made Celtic's defence against Stuttgart, Aberdeen and the 2 Rangers matches. I think he actually can see that Celtic are defending far better with that goalkeeper than we had been under with Schmeichel as the goalkeeper. But I do personally think that O'Neill's keen to get Schmeichel back into the team because of his experience. So much like Gavi Boy, I hope that Sinisalo is our goalkeeper to the end of the season. But I've got a feeling, much like was the case at the end of last season when Brendan Rodgers was desperate to get Schmeichel back into the team, I've got the same sort of feeling that O'Neill is very keen to get Schmeichel back into the team. I thought Sinisalo had a fine few games at the end of last season when Schmeichel was out injured, but Rodgers got Schmeichel back in. I thought a game, I don't think Schmeichel last season, in retrospect, should have been allowed to come back for the last few games of the season. I think his shoulder was still bothering him in the cup final, and which was also sort of borne out by the fact that he basically gave away the Aberdeen equaliser and didn't look very confident commanding his box, and still hasn't looked confident commanding his box ever since that time. So I'm hoping that this. No bad feelings for Kasper Schmeichel. He's had a good time at Celtic. Not such a good time this season, but he did actually give Celtic a lot of good quality as a goalkeeper previous to that. But I'd be happy to see Schmeichel not be Celtic's number 1 goalkeeper for the rest of the season. I'd be probably happier to see Schmeichel on the bench rather than Ross Doohan, assuming that Schmeichel's shoulder is pretty decent. The problem is if you put anybody on the bench, there's a chance they may have to come on 5 minutes into the game and to replace somebody, which is why O'Neill was talking about on Sunday that Kieran Tierney probably would have been fit enough to put on the bench. But the problem would be within 5-10 minutes you lose Liam Scales or you lose Sirachi, whoever you start at left back, and then suddenly Tierney's got to come and play in a game where he might be playing 90 minutes or the next 85 minutes and then playing extra time and penalties and stuff. So, in essence, if you put someone on the bench, they have to be fit enough to play 85 minutes or more, just in case somebody gets a freak early injury. Anyway, so personally on Saturday, just because we're so used to playing games on a Sunday. Yes, I completely, totally agree. In terms of all the rules and regulations, all the fairness, all the fairness, there's no way that Sinisalo shouldn't be Celtic's goalkeeper for the rest of the season, and potentially Celtic's goalkeeper next season and for the next few seasons. I've just got this feeling from the way that O'Neill's talked about things that he's keen to get Schmeichel back in, and if that's the case, it would be, I think, a wrong decision to do that. But that's what football managers are paid to do, is make those sorts of decisions. It didn't work out for Brendan Rodgers at the end of last season. Schmeichel's lack of fitness and goalkeeping errors gave away a goal against Aberdeen that shouldn't have been given away, and ended up us losing the cup final on penalties. So hopefully O'Neill has learned that lesson and isn't going to repeat it by putting Schmeichel back in, not fully fit. So we're nearly at 1 o'clock in the morning. We've had a nice 4 hours talking. It's all been very, very pleasant, respectful, lots and lots of different opinions being shared, lots of great comments from Gavi Boy, Sligo Boy, Shadow Gary 23, Kaiser Sozi as well. So thank you to everybody. I think we'll call it a day, or call it a morning, or call it whatever. Thank you for everybody who's been contributing. Yes, I'm hoping that O'Neill has learned some lessons from his time at Celtic the first time, his less successful time at clubs like Villa and Sunderland and Notts Forest after he left Celtic. His career actually, after leaving Celtic as a manager, isn't terribly good in terms of success and wins and stuff. However, he's done a brilliant job at Celtic first time around, and done a really good job second time around. Hopefully, that carries on for the last few games of the season, last 11 games of the season, and I think 11 wins out of 11 in the next 11 games, and we're going to be celebrating the double at the end of May. So, as I say, thanks very much to everybody who's contributed. Thanks to everybody who has talked all the way through for the last 4 hours or so. Thank you to Sligo Boy. Thank you for all the nice compliments everybody's been giving throughout. Thanks for all the lovely comments and thoughts and theories. So, as I say, planning to do the same thing next Thursday. Plan would be same time, 9 o'clock through to midnight or past midnight. Next week, we don't have a midweek game. We will have the Dundee United game on the Sunday, so we'll have a chance to talk about that game on the following Sunday, and we'll have a chance to talk about the Motherwell game, and maybe by next week we might have a better understanding of who might be our long-term manager, because it's either don't know, Gavi Boy. I can't really sort of keep tally with how many people are on. It does look like at various points there's been 30 people plus, which is really good for this channel. And so when all the analysis is done tomorrow by YouTube, I'll know how many people were on in total over the whole course of 4 hours. The last few, it's been 300, 400, 500 at various different points with, but certainly at different points today, there's been up to about 30 people or so all on the channel at the same time, which is really, really good, and I'm immensely grateful. So thank you very much to everybody. We'll call it a night, and hopefully some or all of you will be able to come back and do the same again next Thursday. And so until next Thursday, goodbye. Thank you very much, and hail, hail.